Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. And it's time, Sam, for what week is it? Week 14 NFL preview. Going game by game, as we always do. It's all brought to you by PrizePicks. We'll be unveiling Sam's PrizePicks lineup later in the show. Mine came out yesterday. We'll review that as well. And we're going to have a winning week. I think both of us. We haven't had a week where both of us have won, but this is the week. You guys could join in as well. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Doing good. I sounded like you were going to go for a bit of like audience participation there. What week is it? Week 4? Yeah.
Oh, I wish can we have a live audience show? When are we going to have?
Stage, yeah.
We maybe in Circa. Maybe it's we'll have. I don't know if we'll have a live audience for the show, but we'll at least be getting together with people at Circa. We'll have more on that later. But maybe we can gather people for the Super Bowl, and we've got all sorts of fun stuff we want to do.
But we do have new and exciting announcements.
Bring it.
We have merch.
Yes, we do.
People have asked for merch. We have merch. Now, it's not, the most expansive selection in the world. We're just dipping our toe into the merch world. But the way to ensure there would be more choice, more things in the store is, if you like this stuff, buy it. So links in the description. It's the second link in the description. So right up top, you will find a link to our merch store. And, Christmas is around the corner.
Oh, it's great. Great timing. I mean, so right now, we'll get to hats. Like we're just, like you said, it's early on. We're going to add more to it.
We'll get to hats. We'll get to potentially, maybe there'll be a Shouty Show t-shirt. Who knows?
Yeah, we're trying to construct some sort of Shouty Show. After yesterday's Nick Wright discussion, I think his silhouette.
A lot of feedback there.
Mostly positive?
Mixed. I would be interested. So, look, that's the thing to send
polarizing.
Yeah. Send us an email on that. I would be very interested in reading thoughtful emails about the addition of Nick Wright to the show and what he brought. Like, there's a lot of people that just hate Shouty Show people across the board, right? Of whom, Nick is one of them.
But that's why we did it. The discourse is important.
So that's the thing. There's also people that appreciated Nick's perspective on the Shouty Shows as a platform, as a, I don't want to say the term art form, but, whatever it is, Nick's perspective on it. So I would be interested in hearing actual feedback from that. Check the mic at the33rdteam.com is the email. If you had thoughts on whether that was a good show or a terrible show because we brought Nick Wright on, I would be interested in hearing why. And that's beyond just, I didn't like it because he's a Shouty Show person.
So let us know.
Yeah.
One other thing we were debating with this merch thing too, we both have, there's mugs there that you can get the Check the Mic mug. You could also get one that just has my silhouette on it and one that just has yours.
Yes.
And if we did this years ago, same thing with sweatshirts. There's one with my face, there's one with your face. Do we risk, maybe a rift between us and have like a competition here?
Right, sewing division.
Would I be offended if you had 100 sales and I had 12? Would I get offended by that? What if people like you way more than me?
I'm sure there's no way whatsoever that either one of us would get upset by the results of that.
No, definitely
not. It's a plan with no drawbacks whatsoever.
I wouldn't be insulted, but buy the Steve mug and we'll see what happens. So we'll see. Maybe we'll have a little competition, part of our charity drive or something. Whoever sells the least gets.
We gotta get ourselves the merch. Forget everyone else. We actually have to get our own merch.
Yeah. Can we just get some? Where's all the stuff? I got my 33rd team hoodie. Wore that on Monday's show. And then I want my Check the Mic hoodie, I want my Steve hoodie, and I'm going to that'll be my 3 shows for the week. I will just rotate through the 3 hoodies, and I will not have to think about anything else that I wear.
Yeah, zero thought into it. I like it.
This thing will be sunset. I don't need this. I don't need any other 3/4 zips or anything like that. Anything else at the top here?
Just an update on the Survivor leagues that we have going. If you go to our Discord, if you want in on the Survivor leagues, we're running a Survivor pool and a Pick'em pool each week. That's where we track our picks that we do on this show against the spread. So the Survivor pool is down to 2 ever-presents, 2 people, and they each survived thanks to Matt Eberflus butchering the final 30 seconds of that game. Each one of them was in peril had the Chicago Bears actually executed a field goal at the end of that game. So those 2 are still alive thanks to Matt Eberflus. 4 people are still alive technically who haven't had a wrong selection, but they joined after week 1, so they're not there with those top 2 people. The Pick'em League, we have 2 people that are now tied at the top. Somebody called Guadon Alex N and Alec L2, I think, is his thing, who's been at the top for a couple of weeks. They're both on 115, 2 clear of the chasing pack. I am up to 7th with 110. I'm only 5 games back from the lead. You, after a rough week, are there at 95. And Harry...
I forgot to input a few picks.
It doesn't say that on the Sleeper League. It just says crappy week 95.
Ugh.
Harry, after an 11-win week, closed the gap all the way to nothing. You and Harry are tied now at 95.
Now we're tied? Oh, man.
So you're both 15 picks back from me.
I should probably put my picks in this week.
Well, certainly if you don't want your child to beat you in the picks, that's something you should do.
Getting tenuous now. Well, we're gonna go game by game. Anything else? We good?
I believe we're good. Did we show the screenshot of the merch, or is that something that just was put in after the fact and we got to say go?
Oh, there it is. Look at that. So we got Check the Mic mugs and hoodies. We get the crew neck with each of our faces individually, and we get the straight up mug with each of our faces individually.
Yeah.
And I assume all this stuff is headed our way to Cincinnati very soon here.
So this is, again, very much an experiment to dip the toe in the water of the merch world. And if you want an expanded selection, you need to show us that people actually want this stuff. Otherwise, we're just wasting everybody's time here.
I sure hope that's not the case. Anyway. All right, let's get to it. Week 14, it's the last week of buys. It's the last week we can slack off and not have to cover every single team and every single game. 6 teams on bye, so I'm sure we're going to fly through this show. Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals. It's 4:05 game. The Cardinals favored by 2.5. Battle for first place again here in the NFC West. Seattle won just a couple weeks ago. They're 7-5. Cardinals are 6-6. Over under 44.5 from our friends over at FanDuel.
Yeah, and the Seahawks defense, I think, is really kind of rounding into form in the last few weeks. We're starting to see this defense really take shape and become a major factor. Against Arizona was the first of the Leonard Williams, takes control, dominates, has the game of his life games. He then did it again against the Jets. So that's always interesting. If you have one player that wrecks a game and then they play again a couple of weeks later, what are the adjustments that the team that got wrecked makes to try and take that guy away? How do they slow down Leonard Williams this time?
Yeah, I mean, the other part of that was we've talked a lot about the Seattle linebacking core and their trade for Ernest Jones and how that has reshaped their run defense. Arizona's run the ball extremely well, except against Seattle a couple weeks ago. So I think Arizona. Again, I'll say I repeat it every week, but Arizona can be special if Kyler Murray's special, thrown to Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr., but they're still at their best when they get James Conner going. The offensive line has done a nice job up front for the Cardinals. They've also played pretty good defense, especially at home this year, and it was a defensive struggle in that Seattle-Arizona game just a couple weeks ago. Geno Smith with a red zone interception that maybe made it a little bit closer. So I think we're looking at a good game here, and to me, it comes down to the QB mistakes, and how many are made each on each side.
Yeah, it's reductive, but it's true to say that Kyler Murray kind of is the determining factor on whether Arizona has one of those games where they look great and win or don't. Whether he's able to play at that incredible level, whether he's able to find enough of those plays. Even against Minnesota, there were some plays there to be made that he didn't, and a couple of the mistakes were enough to swing that back in Minnesota's direction. Arizona's defense continues to just be way more impressive than you think it should be on paper. They just do such a good job week on week, scheming guys open, getting unblocked pressure, which I think is a good indicator of scheme and the impact that it can have, given the fact that their personnel just doesn't look like it should be able to produce the way it is.
Yeah, they forced, some of those negative plays they forced against Seattle kept them in the game. Only able to put up 6 points a couple weeks ago, but it was close. And, there was a pick 6 from Kyler Murray that, Seattle didn't get much going offensively either. That was a surprise to me. Again, Arizona's defense has been very impressive. They have, I think, absolutely they've only given up. They gave up 23 points to Minnesota last week. Prior to that, they gave up 9 against the Bears, 6 against the Jets, 16 against Seattle, 7 of which came on a pick 6. So they were on a run of really cracking down defensively. And, last week through, 3 quarters of the game, after 3 quarters, how many would they give up? 2 touchdowns until Minnesota won late. So I think Arizona's been very impressive, and I repeat it every week, impressed with Jonathan Gannon, the defense, and the upside that they have when Kyler Murray is capable of playing special. So I'm curious to see how Arizona tries to get the run game going against Seattle. Do they lean into Kyler Murray as a run threat a little bit more? And, who takes better care of the ball? Geno got strip sacked in this game last time around, had the red zone interception. Can Arizona still create those types of turnovers?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that needs to change this game for Arizona to have a shot is, this was as shut down as that offense has been this season against Seattle the first time around. And a lot of that was Leonard Williams just single-handedly wrecking shop. But they had 6 points in that game. I mean, you got no shot if you're going to score 6.
I also don't. It's the time of the year I don't know what to do with injury reports. I mean, all the time. But you're sitting
hurt.
After a Wednesday practice, Seattle, who didn't practice and everything was not disclosed. I don't know. Tyler Lockett, Leonard Williams, Ernest Jones was limited. DK Metcalf was limited. I know DK has battled a ton of injuries this year. I'll assume those guys are going to be fine, but tough to predict exactly who's in and who's out here on a Thursday going into the game. Last thing I want to highlight is the secondary in Seattle going up against Marvin Harrison Jr., Arizona's receivers. Good matchups there. This was also the game where 2 weeks ago Devin Witherspoon had that great play where he's the one who kind of cut Kyler Murray off on the bootleg, forced the errant throw. Anytime Witherspoon, Reek Woolen matched up against those Arizona receivers, we got some fun matchups there.
Yep, absolutely.
Last thing I'll say, Darius Robinson, the first-round pick for Arizona, did make his debut last week for Arizona. They don't have a bunch of dudes up front, like we said, who could win one-on-ones. He was drafted to maybe be that guy, mostly an edge rusher, but who, long 290-pounder who can, as you mentioned during the draft, like an old-school 5-tech who can line up on the interior, rush the passer. Interested to see what he can do here in his second week. He also didn't practice yesterday, or had limited practice yesterday. So
and he was lined up very much as a situational edge rusher in that first game. And he played 22 snaps, I think, 18 of which were pass rushes. So they have him very much as a rotational guy in obvious passing downs right now, as opposed to, somebody that's going to be an impact all the way through the game.
All right, man, should be a fun game. The 4:05 during the witching hour starting time, but it'll be fun. Who are you taking? We've got Arizona favored by 2.5 at home.
Yeah, interesting given the way the first game went between the two. I hate every single line this week, all of them.
Make sure you preface that before every pick.
Can't stand them. I am picking Seattle to cover this line on the road.
I'll also take Seattle. I always pick wrong against Arizona, though. Always wrong against Arizona, with Arizona. Harry's going to pick Arizona, so at least there'll be some separation between myself and my son here.
Only on this game.
This game. Something will change
right
with this game. Let's go Sunday Night Football. Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs favored by 3.5 here. They're 11-1. Chargers are 8-4. They played back in Week 4, and Kansas City won 17-10. And over-under here is 42.5 in Kansas City. This should be a fun one.
Yeah.
Especially the way Kansas City's playing. Kind of tight with everybody.
There's been, I think, quite a lot of movement this week on all the lines. Because remember, the sleeper app locks the lines on Tuesday or whatever, so they get the kind of early line. Where now on Thursday, you get a couple of days' worth of bets moving those lines. And both the last game and this game, I think, have moved a couple of points since they started. This one in the sleeper app was a 4.5, I think. So it's moved, in the direction of the Chargers, which I think is probably the right direction. As much as... we had Nick right on yesterday, and he was obviously talking about how Kansas City is, like, the narrative around them is off. And I think he made some points that were reasonable, some points that were less reasonable, and some points where it doesn't actually matter for the purposes of this game. So one of the points he was making is that he thinks they're effectively kind of screwing around in the regular season, right? Like, not necessarily doing their best to win the game as much as doing their best to work on things and make sure that they're good to go in January. Well, that doesn't necessarily help them win these games. So if it's a reason why they're struggling, it's a reason why they'll be better in a month, not why they'll be better now.
One specific reason I want to highlight, though, where Kansas City has struggled and why the offense, over the last 2 years, it's been a good, not great offense. It certainly hasn't been what Kansas City was the beginning of Mahomes' career between 2018 and 2022. Right. The left tackle situation.
Yeah.
And so it does look like they signed DJ Humphries a couple weeks ago. It does sound like he's in line to start. 10-year player from the Arizona Cardinals. And, first time he's ever played with the Chiefs. But this is what happened last year as well. And it's funny because the offense was night and day last year. I mentioned this on the other show when they had rookie Wanya Morris in last year, and that was the Christmas game where they couldn't move the ball against the Raiders, and they're turning it over. I mean, their worst games have coincided with awful left tackle play. Yeah. And we talk a lot about creep back toward average. It's not about one position, but it does seem like the Chiefs' offense is a little fragile to the one position, because there are certain plays over the last 3 or 4 weeks. If you've watched the Chiefs closely, there are some plays where the left tackle is getting beaten, and that's Wanya Morris, and it's been Kingsley Suamataia. The left tackle gets beaten in like 1.5 seconds, and there's no shot.
Yeah.
And the fact that Mahomes' sack rate is up, I think there's a combination of Mahomes isn't really as shifty as he was, just a little bit, maybe losing a half a step. He still had some great plays. So he's not, the sack avoidance hasn't been as good. And then there's like 1 or 2 plays a game where he just has no shot. Nick Benito's getting in there, whoever it is. So if you lose some of those plays, DJ Humphries is a good, solid pass protector. Now, he hasn't played football since week 17 of last year, but he's a good, solid pass protector. And this is exactly what happened to the Chiefs down the stretch last year. They got Donovan Smith, veteran, get him back, solid pass protector, and you just lose those awful nothing plays. And I think that could go a long way to Kansas City getting their offense back on track.
I think it's specifically, it's the Nick Benito type player that, Wanya Morris is not a good pass blocker, but generally speaking, those not good pass rushers struggle the most against those quick, athletically gifted pass rushing type players, as opposed to just a generally good player who might be an all-rounder and they can at least match up athletically with them. Like Nick Benito absolutely wrecks Wanya Morris. Against the Raiders, it was Kayvon Chason, who's a terrible pass rusher, but is at least extremely athletic. Like, that's why he went in the first round, right? So it's guys like that, and that's why the losses are instant, because he just gets beaten for athleticism, and it's why I think Mahomes just has no shot. If you are consistently sacking Patrick Mahomes, you have a problem on the offensive line, because that guy is as good as anybody at avoiding sacks. So I think that's huge. Any version of DJ Humphries that's remotely healthy is a massive upgrade at left tackle over Wanya Morris or the rookie Suamataia. So that's the only question, right? We're December the 5th before he's effectively good to go coming off this ACL injury. Does that indicate this has been a difficult, rehabbing process, or it's been a tough road back and he might not be anywhere near where he was before? But if you get anything like his career baseline, this is a massive upgrade at one of the most important positions and maybe the single biggest individual weakness on this Kansas City roster, which is huge for their prospects going forward.
Yeah, and just using PFF grades, our friends over at PFF, to put a little context there, Humphries pass blocking grade in the 70s, a couple in the 60s, but low 80s, like that's been his career. Anywhere from 65 to 80. Wanya Morris has been in the 50s. Suamataia was in the 20s. And so it's hamstrung the Chiefs offense. So I think that's a key one position spot. Maybe at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is just completely fragile. He's the most fragile quarterback in the world. He can't create offense without a good left tackle. Who knows? But that's not really the case. But it has been a huge factor. And if they solidify that, Nuke Hopkins, Xavier Worthy, they've started to get him involved a little bit more. I feel like Kansas City's offense is ready to get a little bit better and more consistent, even coming off of one of their worst games against the Raiders. And then on the other side with the Chargers, Ladd McConkey had 80% of their receiving yards last week. They had a stretch in the middle of the season where it felt like Herbert was spreading the ball around a little bit better. They need some of that. Herbert has been one of the highest graded quarterbacks by PFF this year. He's been very consistent. It hasn't shown up in the production because the weakness at playmaker, basically, tight end to receiver. It's one of the worst, pass catching cores in the NFL. And I personally, I'm starting to feel that these last couple of weeks when they fall behind the Ravens a couple weeks ago, and they need to win through the air. They're unable to do it, and they're coming off a game where they were Atlanta sacked Herbert 5 times, and it wasn't because they were getting quick pressures, because he didn't have anywhere to go with the ball. That's starting to catch up to the Chargers a little bit, they need somebody to step up with the rookie Lad McConkey.
Yeah, they do. The other thing is, I think this is a fascinating game because the Chargers defense is the side that's the best unit in this football game right
True.
now. Like last year, that would have been the Chiefs defense. This year, it's the Chargers defense, which is arguably the best pass defense in football, depending on the measures you look at, the metrics you're using. But it's phenomenal. Kansas City's pass offense has not been as good as it's been previously. How much is that going to be improved if DJ Humphries is a big upgrade at left tackle? Does it matter? Is it enough to offset the disadvantage going up against the Chargers pass defense? And then, you have this dynamic that I've been talking about, that the Chiefs defense is not as good as it's been in previous years. I do think that the Chargers offense can have some success and actually move the ball against them.
Yeah, they have not made as many key stops these last few weeks. I know you pulled out the EPA numbers a few weeks ago, but I feel like early in the year, even they were top 4 in points per game allowed. These last few weeks, a little creakier.
Right.
Against Denver, against Carolina, against the Raiders, Bills, the last 4 games essentially. Some of the injuries in the secondary catching up, I think, to Kansas City. So
big loss for the Chargers. J.K. Dobbins went on IR. Their running back, who'd been doing a really good job this year. Coming off those multiple injuries, gets another one that not a long-term devastating one the way the previous ones are, but it's enough to land him on IR and be out for a bit. So now you take away the guy that's capable of the explosive runs and the big plays, and he's got 10 breakaway runs of 15 or more yards this season. Now you're down to Gus Edwards, who's a very different style of running back, and even if he can pound the football, he's not a breakaway runner. And then the rookie, Kimani Vidal, is that how we're saying that now?
Sure.
So Vidal and Edwards, I think, is a significant drop-off based off current evidence versus what they'd had in J.K. Dobbins.
All right, man. One last thing. Narrative game.
What's the narrative?
You're bringing in Jim Harbaugh to compete in the AFC West with defending champs, and Chargers haven't had a whole lot of success against the Chiefs. Didn't have a lot of success in the Brandon Staley era against the Chiefs. Harbaugh, I think, has done a good job turning the Chargers around. I think they still have more work to do. They're turning over the roster just in 1 year, kind of getting Harbaugh's guys in there. But I do think this does go a long way for the Chargers if they could pull this off. I said this back when Burrow was playing when he went up against the Ravens and the Steelers. They need a game that can prove that they can compete. This doesn't do a ton for winning the division this year or anything, but does this go a long way to say, hey, we can compete in the AFC West in the coming years, to go on the road, Arrowhead, night game, something to keep an eye on. I think the Harbaugh narrative against the Chiefs here. In the last time they played, remember, the Chargers had Herbert with 4 injuries, no offensive tackles, no Derwin James. They were completely banged up, lose 17-10.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. You're right. The first game, I don't think is necessarily a fair reflection of what the Chargers offense can do. This might be a better reflection at this point. And they're kind of battling the narrative because they already lost the first game, because Kansas City is 11-1, all these things. So yeah, it's a big statement if the Chargers are able to knock them off.
All right, let's make some picks. Chiefs by 3.5. Where did you say the line started?
It's 4.5 from the sleep wrap. I feel like it was even further than that at one point, but anyway, it was
moving toward the Chargers.
At least a point in the Chargers direction.
3.5. Where are you going?
Going with the Chargers to cover that line.
I will also take the Chargers. I think Chiefs have been playing close games. I was joking that they're calibrated to win by 3.
Yeah,
to every team,
if
good
they are,
or bad.
If they are, they will.
So I'll go with that assumption. And Harry, again, disagreeing with us. He's going with the Chiefs here.
Oh wow,
kids trying to make some moves. 4:25 Sunday, Buffalo Bills at the Los Angeles Rams. Bills favored by 4.5. Your AFC East champion, Bills. By the way, the Chiefs win the AFC West if they win this game against the Chargers. Bills are the first team to clinch a division, as they did on Sunday Night Football. They're 10-2. Rams are 6-6, game behind the Seahawks in the West. Over under 49.5 by our friends at FanDuel.
So the Chiefs were the first team to clinch a playoff spot, and the Bills are the first team to clinch a division.
Yeah, there we go. I was saying division, right? Did I say
No, you were. I was just
You're just adding
Yeah.
more context,
exactly.
which I appreciate.
Just endless context here.
That's what we do.
Sometimes misinformation, otherwise lots of context.
It's either misinformation or it's just information.
Yeah, I mean it's information regardless, right? It's either correct information or it's misinformation. But
It's
either
on you.
way,
Do what you want with
it's
it.
just a show full of information.
Do what
which may
you
or
want
may not be correct.
with it.
Buffalo's looked really impressive. I mean, they have looked like as good a team as there is in the NFL this season. I think there's a fair argument that Kansas City has not looked as good as their record. Buffalo's looked every bit as good, though. I mean, they've been extremely impressive every time they've been tested.
They really have, since the Ravens game at least.
Right.
One dud in there, but especially these last few weeks. I mean, they kind of did this last year, Buffalo, where they hit a stretch where they were playing, I think, their best football. Well, definitely down the stretch. Remember, they had no margin for error down the stretch last year, week 11 or so, right around this time of year, and I think they won out to get to the 2 seed. And they're in a similar spot right now. And I think every year we come in and say, how much can you rely on not Josh Allen to win games? And they're doing that more than ever, which is interesting given the Josh Allen MVP narrative and everything. But this is, I think, the best combination of they can run the ball, they can throw the ball in a whole bunch of different ways. They create a ton after the catch. This is the first year it's been a yak-centric offense because of the way it's constructed. And again, Allen, running the show, not just forcing passes down the field and playing superhuman. And as I say every week, they have that if they need it. And they have those special plays on 4th and 2 against Kansas City, or if they need to dial it up, Josh Allen could always throw a touchdown pass to himself.
Yeah. Now that's in the playbook.
You just could always do that.
Yeah.
I mean, do they set up the fake? You run a little scat. You run scat, right? You get the little quick hitter to Cooper, and then you fake Allen. Somebody's got to cover the pitch man now at all times.
I mean, I just wonder if they've had the conversation with Amari Cooper now. Look, that's great. It's awesome. We scored the touchdown.
Next time
don't ever do that again. Allen's going to be looking for it every time. Under no circumstances throw that ball to him ever again, Amari. You missed the day in training camp where we give that decree to the room. Allen's going to be looking for this. Don't throw it to him. You weren't there. That's not your fault. That's on us. But now don't ever do it again.
The wet blanket of reason in my mentions the other day was like, shouldn't that play have been called dead for forward progress being stopped? It's like, probably, maybe.
I mean, it was
pretty close. It was close. I'm glad it happened.
It's not egregious, particularly in the way it's going today, where people are launching in with a pile and driving these things forward. The mall is becoming a bigger and bigger part of today's NFL. So no, let it go.
I just think in this game in particular, Buffalo's set up to take advantage of the Rams. I still think the Rams, little weak up front in the run game, other than Jared Verse. I mean, he plays with intense power.
Verse against Deion Dawkins is a fun one-on-one matchup. Dawkins has been playing very well this season. Very good left tackle, good pass blocker. Both tackles actually for Buffalo are their strongest players on the offensive line. So yeah, their run game's been pretty good. On the other hand, I do think that the Rams, they're vulnerable up front in terms of anchor, but it might be a way Buffalo wins in the trenches in the run game, but the Rams actually have the pieces to attack them in the pass game. Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, the rookie, they can actually, I think, get after that interior of Buffalo's offensive line, even if Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown might be able to lock down Jared Verse. Yeah,
no, I agree. There's definitely something to it. That's why I think this is where Buffalo shines, right? Is I think they can say, hey, this is we're going to throw the 6th offensive lineman out there, which we like to do, and run duo and move people at the line of scrimmage and let James Cook, let Ray Davis, bounce it outside and create some big plays. So I'm picturing a lot of the big runs that they had in the snow game last week being effective here against the Rams. I just think Rams are sitting here every game, season's on the line right now, and I think they need a special Stafford. I think they need and he might be facing some pressure from Buffalo's defensive front. He might be under pressure. I think you're going to need 4 or 5 big-time throws from Stafford in this game.
I mean, I think that's...
You need Stafford's best to kind of hang with Buffalo here.
Honestly, that's kind of the story with the Rams every week as well. They're almost similar to Arizona in that regard. Like, if Stafford doesn't play spectacularly, the Rams probably don't win the game, generally.
Yeah.
It's a bit broader than that because they are able to lean on that. They're still very much a stars and scrubs constructed team. Like, it's not quite as crazy as it used to be. Yeah, but now and they're sort of underrated stars or stars that have emerged since that. But it's like, instead of being, Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald and blah, 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 now it's Stafford and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams. And if those guys all fire, they're very good. Like Kyron Williams, they lean on him a lot, and he's been very good.
I mean, that's the other part of it. Kyron can be special, man. I mean, that dude, the way he sealed the deal last week against the Saints, the way his knack for getting into the end zone, inside the 10, he is outstanding. So, stars, man. The stars on the Rams got to make their plays. This is the feature game, 4:25 on Sunday. Only 3 games in the 4 o'clock window on Sunday. So, I think it's going to be a good one. Buffalo by 4.5 here. Where are you going?
I will go with the Bills to cover that 4.5.
I'll also take the Bills. They haven't slipped up in a while, and I think they can win in a variety of ways. Harry's also gonna take the Bills in this game. Ooh. And speaking of Harry's, not my son. Sometimes you need a no-brainer gift that no one will want to swap out, like a solid shaving set, and that's what you get from our friends over at Harry's. Right now, you can get 50% off Harry's holiday craft set with a custom green gift box and free handle engraving. Perfect for that one guy who's impossible to shop for, especially if that guy is you. Sam and I both received our Harry's set last month. Was huge during Movember. Huge to get that beautiful, perfect shave and nice and smooth and clean. Enjoying the Harry's experience right now, especially with the foaming shave gel. And that's something you can get within the craft set. So it includes one craft handle, your choice of foaming shave gel or shave cream, 2 extra blades, a travel blade cover, no gift wrapping required. The set comes in a rich, sleek green gift box that will stand out, personalized with your available engraving options. It's a risk-free purchase. Harry's offers a 100% money-back guarantee. And if you order by December 12th, we're looking at a week from today, December 12th, you can receive your holiday craft set by Christmas. There's also other hair and grooming products that fit whatever you need over at Harry's. So here's what you do. 50% off the holiday craft set, a custom green gift box, and a free handle engraving when you go to harrys.com/checkthemic. That's harrys.com/checkthemic. You get 50% off Harry's holiday craft set, which is one more week to get this before Christmas. Let's go Atlanta Falcons at the Minnesota Vikings. Big rematch here. 98 NFC Championship.
Why would you bring that game up? Every Vikings fan, just stop listening right now.
Sorry.
You just brought back all kinds of PTSD.
I apologize. Vikings by 5.5 here, over under 46.5 from our friends over at FanDuel. The first place, 6-6 Falcons going up against the second place, 10-2 Minnesota Vikings.
Most accurate kicker of the time, hadn't missed a kick all season. Why would you bring that up?
Gary Anderson was losing it like Justin Tucker, just ahead of his time.
Only for that kick. Just not up until then.
He hadn't missed a kick all year?
Yeah, first kick he missed.
That's right. Back in 98.
Randy Moss, the most explosive player in the NFL. Let's take a knee going into halftime. No, why would we want to take a shot?
Jamal Anderson, Dirty Bird, Chris Chandler. They go get waxed in the Super Bowl against Denver. Minnesota versus Denver Super Bowl would have been.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this game, though.
Yeah. Way to ruin today.
Kirk Cousins' revenge game.
Kirk Cousins against the Flores defense, I think, will be fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, you made the point. Look, the idea that he's seen it in practice, it's overblown. Because, he goes sees the scout team in practice most of the time.
You hear that all the time, right? Like, people are like, oh, he saw this defense in practice every day. He did not. You see the opposing defense during training camp. You're both installing, right? Both sides, getting your reps in. But once the season starts, like, you practice against the scout team who's imitating the team you're playing. So you don't actually, it's not like he had this full year of going up against Brian Flores and understanding the nuances. But Kirk, he's really analytical. He was like, I'm going to be in Atlanta next year, so I'm going to take all my notes. So he's got He's got an idea of what the Flores
watching the
defense is doing.
while his reps weren't happening, while
sure
the backups were getting their reps.
Processing.
Kirk's got an eye on Flores' side.
You've seen Kirk on with the Mannings on the Manning cast too, and they're like, "Let's do fun stuff," and he's like, "How do you guys handle,
Yeah.
What do you check to against zero when they're showing zero?" Like they're like, "Dude, stop talking football right now."
He doesn't.
So he was probably picking Flores' brain last year.
Yeah, he's not good at extracurricular fun. It's like, no, I need. This is an opportunity to learn. I need to learn because I'm Kirk Cousins. I'm not,
Spend
physically
all your time
gifted.
Advancing your career.
It's fascinating because on the one hand, he is I genuinely think you watch that quarterback documentary, the Netflix thing. There might not be a quarterback that has deliberately squeezed as much out of their talent that they have than Kirk Cousins throughout his career. Like that guy, literally no stone is left unturned, with the weird exception of taking Tuesdays off, which he's decided is just a beneficial thing for him. But that's a little strange. But other than that,
mentally,
no, just totally. Like he's just like, I don't work on Tuesdays. I think it was Tuesdays, maybe it was Mondays, whatever. He decided there's a day of the week he's just not doing anything on. He thinks that's a good thing give himself the break or whatever.
Need a break.
But it's slightly strange, this dichotomy of like, I will squeeze every last drop out of my talent except on Tuesday, where I'm just not going to do anything because I think that's probably good. That's a little strange. But anyway, other than that, he's laser focused on like, what can I get out of my talent? Because I'm not Patrick Mahomes. I'm not, as physically gifted as some of these other guys. I need to be as good as I can humanly be everywhere else. So the dude does put in the work. That's one element. If he struggles against Flores' defense, it's not going to be for lack of studying it. Yeah. It's going to be because Brian Flores' defense is a nightmare.
It's interesting because if you just looked at the Vikings stats, you would say it's constructed like a bend but don't break defense. They give up a lot of yards, but at the end of they'll force turnovers, and they've had some big games against good offenses. But obviously they do it in a completely different way. They don't bend but don't break. They attack like crazy. Is Cousins better equipped to handle the blitz? The Vikings will give up a lot of yards to outside receivers. Drake London had a big game last week, and I think he's still a key part of that offense. Like, how does Atlanta? They came out of their bye and had Cousins' worst game of the season. You don't often see that, right? Where everything looks way worse than before, to the point where, look, Cousins played well most of the season, but now people are asking for Michael Penix Jr. Like, what's going on here? But are you one more game away from actually thinking about that?
I don't know. I think it's a mistake to view this as a continuation of struggles early in the season. Like, it's not. The baseline has not been terrible all the way through the year, and then suddenly it's costing them games. He was really good for a stretch, and we were like, oh, look, it's all come good. They fixed it. They've worked out how to play with Cousins. Cousins has understood his own limitations, and suddenly everything is great. He had a terrible game last week, and I'm not for a minute saying that was not a problem. It was not terrible, and it wasn't the reason they lost the game. It was. All those things are true. But I don't think you can look at that and week one and draw a straight line and say, they've just been wasting their time here with Cousins. Why are we not putting in Penix? Like, what's the delay? Because the middle stuff happened, and the middle stuff was different. So I think the problem is because Cousins is old, noodle-armed, and immobile now, right? All of those things, whether or not they're permanent fixtures of his game or just the current version coming off the Achilles injury, they are the current status quo. As long as those things are true, if he has a bad game from a decision-making standpoint, it looks a joke. Like, it looks atrocious. It looks utterly unworkable, and it looks like a disgrace of offense, right? If he has a good game from a decision-making standpoint, none of it matters because he's able to overcome that, and he puts the ball where it needs to be, and he lets his playmakers make plays, and all is good. So, Michael Penix is unquestionably a physically superior quarterback at this point. Is he a superior quarterback overall, though? I don't think there's any clear evidence that that's the case. He's almost certainly a superior physical quarterback to last week's Kirk Cousins.
Oh, yeah.
But that is not the Kirk Cousins we've had for the majority of this year. So, because this is the other string to the drafting Michael Penix as high as you do, right? And another reason why it's potentially a problematic move is at some point in the season, if Cousins does have a bad game or two consecutively, the calls to put in Michael Penix Jr. get very loud. So, like, that's part of this as well. I don't think Kirk Cousins has done enough to play his way to the bench. So I think if you are bowing to the noise to put in Michael Penix, I think that's kind of silly.
The relationship I think that could be involved in this game is Kevin O'Connell knowing how Kirk Cousins is wired, helping to rewire him a little bit, as we talked about in the other show, to become this, here's how you make fourth quarter comebacks, man. Here's how you increase your aggressiveness just a little bit in key situations. I wonder if it's more like KOC working with Brian Flores this week on how do we dictate the action to Kirk in this offense. I think that'll be interesting.
And just here's what Kirk doesn't do well. Do more of this.
Yeah, I mean, can you turn him into conservative Kirk? You know what I mean? Like, can you move him? Can you move the levers defensively to get what you want? Get him to check down. Get him to be more conservative in certain ways. I feel like KOC would know how to do that as much as anyone.
Yeah, and I think I'm sure there are things that Cousins does not like seeing, right? Like things that defenses can do that he has always struggled with. And if anyone would know what those are, it would be Kevin O'Connell.
That's the fun cat and mouse game. I don't think O'Connell and Zach together with the Rams. I think there was a couple of years they were together. O'Connell was offensive coordinator. Zach was the QB coach. Zach was receiver coach one year too, wasn't he?
I think O'Connell was there right at the start of Zach being there when Zach was lower down in the pecking order, I think.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he'd gotten as far as
there's
QB coach.
There's some familiarity there as well. So I think that's going to be interesting. I also want to see, I mentioned the other day, like Bijan. I love Bijan. I feel like there's just a little bit more to him creating some explosive plays in the run game, but you're going up against a really good run defense with Minnesota. So that entire side of the ball is fascinating.
Just we both love on this show single game sample sizes of things that probably don't matter.
Oh yeah, love this.
Kirk Cousins revenge game. Well, the previous Kirk Cousins revenge game was going up against Mike Zimmer and his defense in Dallas. And in that game, Kirk Cousins had 9.3 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a passer rating of 144.8. So maybe a motivated, angry, spiteful Kirk Cousins is actually the most potent Kirk Cousins.
He's lulling you to sleep on the QB show. That he's just, nice Kirk.
Yeah,
but
like
he's
you
very
think he's
vengeful.
just, Kirko with the goofiness and the chains and, trying to play it all up. But actually, deep inside, he's got the Tom Brady,
motivated by spite.
I'm going to kill you.
Spite's a powerful motivator, for sure. Other side of the ball, Sam Darnold with more 20-plus yard passes than any quarterback in the NFL this year.
Really?
And going up against an Atlanta defense that we pick on every week. They did play really well last week against the Chargers. And I think they did a nice job on the back end to allow the pass rush to get home. I'm always like I'm a Darnold believer this year. I also do know that I think he's got like the 2 or 3 turnover worthy play games in him, maybe more than some other quarterbacks, in part because of the aggressiveness. So I think that ends up potentially being the difference in the game. Like if he hits Jesse Bates a couple times in the secondary, but loving the way Darnold's played these last couple weeks. And the way this pass offense has looked with all of the weapons finally getting healthy on the inside.
And I know they found a pass rush last week, but generally speaking, this is a terrible pass rushing group, which should help Minnesota's offense not have to worry about that too much and be able to just actually deploy the explosive passing game that they can bring to the table.
All right, man.
This, by the way, I mean, interestingly, Atlanta's defense I don't think is particularly good across the board. They are quite good at avoiding explosive pass plays, though. Like, that's the one area where they actually do have some strength. Jesse Bates being a legitimate ball hawk in the back end. Like, they have some strength in that specific area. So Minnesota's strength, arguably the best explosive passing team in football, matches up actually quite well with Atlanta's defense.
I'll add some color to that. One of my favorite things to do when I'm looking at a defense and trying to get an idea of what they are, I look at the PFF pass rushing grade as a team and the coverage grade as a team. Usually they're going to work together. The fact that the Falcons have the number 5 coverage grade, despite this pass rush that we trash every week, that is second worst. That is difficult to do, meaning they are doing good stuff on the back end, avoiding the explosive plays, playing solid coverage, and like last week, the fact that they're not winning quickly for some of those sacks means they're winning on the back end, and so that's how they're executing this year with Raheem Morris.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's make a pick. Minnesota by 5.5 Sunday at 1.
Oh God, I'm going with the Vikings. That doesn't seem like something I should be doing.
You at the revenge game stat is messing with you. Give me the Falcons to stay within the 5.5 here. It'll be a good game.
Last week is living too long on my memory for the Falcons.
Harry's got the Vikings here. Cousins. When was the last time Cousins, had back-to-back 4 interception games?
I don't know.
Probably not. He won't be that bad again this week. One more bad week though. Penix discussion.
It's Penix time.
It's happening.
It's already happening.
All right, Simpsons time. The Simpsons game. Monday Night Football, Cincinnati Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys. Cincinnati favored by 5.5. They're just 4-8. Cowboys 5-7. Joe Burrow versus Cooper Rush this Monday.
Are you going to be watching The Simpsons?
I think so. I think the kids will want, even though they don't know what The Simpsons is, but they'll like the fact that it's a cartoon.
Mina's on it, and other people that I didn't recognize from their cartoons.
Oh yeah, it's one of those like, here's this Nickelodeon star from 15 years ago.
I don't know. Well, no, it might be two completely recognizable football people. They just don't appear obviously recognizable from their Simpsons caricature. And I only recognize Mina's because she posted it herself, saying look out for me on the broadcast, and then she's the middle cartoon. But
she's on as a Simpsons cartoon.
Yeah, but the people beside her could easily be like Dano and somebody else. They just don't translate to Simpsons characters.
Gotcha. Understood. I'll probably dabble in that broadcast.
Dabble in Simpsons. Are you equipped to do that? It's like ESPN Plus. You generally don't have all the streaming
I bought it
things.
for the
you got suckered in,
the Chargers-Cardinals game.
That's
and then how do you cancel it? Who knows?
You're still there. Right for the Simpsons.
And then I had to double up because I don't know, the Disney Plus, and then I added Disney Plus to it.
You got to get the bundle.
Because we had to watch something.
You got a bundle.
Yeah, I get it bundled with Disney Plus now.
Yeah. Because ESPN is not, but if you're getting...
I don't need Hulu, though. I didn't do the triple with Hulu. I don't need that.
But then you get the bundle. It's cheaper.
No, adding Hulu does not make it cheaper.
It does. It makes it cheaper if the one you're starting from is anything other than ESPN Plus. ESPN Plus to the bundle is not cheaper, but the other ones, it's actually cheaper to just bundle it than to get each one individually.
I might need to redo the whole thing.
You've made a mess of the whole thing.
Man, once upon a time we had cable.
Right.
Big cable believer.
I just want
one remote, all channels.
Yeah, I just want a world where there's something that just monitors what goes onto my TV and charges me for it, right? This is what I'm watching. Everything's available. There's a box there that just records what I'm looking at, right? And then just bill me. That's all I want. Figure out what it costs. I don't
want everything a la carte?
Yes, I want everything available to me, and then the computer in the box can just tell me what that cost at the end of it all.
You know what else is real confusing?
What's that?
That HBO is called Max now. But when you're growing up, it was HBO and Cinemax were like competing channels.
Right.
So now they've stolen the name from their old competition. It's confusing. Any other old man stuff we want to complain about?
Not yet.
The worst part is when you're in the streaming, so you can't flip to another game. You can't just change channels. I can't be in Prime watching Thursday Night Football tonight and flip over to the college football game that usually is on during the
There's a lot of stupid things about it. You can't.
I have a 2 TV setup, so I could put both on, but it's just obnoxious. I can't just, it's commercial. I'm going to flip over.
But even the YouTube TV thing, you should be able to create your own 4-box mix of anything at any time. Like we have the technology for that to happen.
They'll get there.
That shouldn't exist as I'm limited to this mix.
Well, even the 4-box mixes are limited because if you do if the local news channel and that freezes all the time and it limits your options, the whole thing. They let you do the custom one this year, but it was
it's still a mess. Still not what it should be.
I don't want to trash them because we'd love to have YouTube TV as a sponsor.
Well, we could help them with this feedback.
We can help promote the product. Sunday Ticket. All of our fans love the NFL. That might be good for you. YouTube TV. You can join us. What are we talking about?
The Bengals against the Cowboys.
Bengals Cowboys. Mm-hmm. What are you looking for in this one? MVP candidate Joe Burrow.
Yeah. Well, we should talk about this on a different show, one of the Wednesday shows. But I am curious as a voter. whether winning is actually an inherently necessary part of value, MVP. Because otherwise, like if you're playing out of your mind but not winning, does the value you bring to the table actually mean anything? How, like, if value has any inherent value, surely it's only in connection to winning. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, I'm as analytically inclined as I am. There is probably something where you just lean in. If you're winning, you might have more to do with it than the numbers show. Over time. Now, and again, in a one-game setting, like, do I actually want to credit Patrick Mahomes when the opposing team was in game-winning field in two different games where he could have thrown a legitimate touchdown to end the game, and the opposing team was in field goal range to win the game, and his team won both of those games? Do I actually want to give him the credit that he just has this it and aura and whatever? Does he? Yeah, he does. Like, over time, he does. Like, this season, in those specific games, no. So, I don't know how you weigh that. I do believe that, like, we can look Burrow throw for throw and say, yeah, he's adding more value than anyone else. At the same time, he also fumbled against the Chiefs in the game that they lost by a score, right? So he's made
we're looking
the opposite of Mahomes, where he's been look, Joe Burrow's been a much better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes this year.
Yes.
But in the fourth quarter, overall, when it's mattered, Mahomes has made more plays than Burrow, although I did just highlight some misses that he had that he got away with. So how do you do all that?
It's the argument we had yesterday with the Shouty Show stuff. Like, at the moment, everything else around him, particularly on defense, is so bad that Joe Burrow has to pitch basically a perfect game for them to win, right? If he doesn't, then his mistakes are arguably the reason they lose the game, and that gets highlighted in a negative way. And this is I think, kind of one of the points that Nick Wright was making that was kind of interesting, is we never do the reverse, right? We never sort of ask the opposite side of these things. Like, other winning quarterbacks had plenty of mistakes, but they won, so it doesn't matter. Whereas because Burrow is walking this tightrope of he needs to be basically perfect, every mistake he makes is like the difference between winning and losing. So he gets unfairly maligned or negatively viewed because of that. I think you can easily make the case that Joe Burrow has been the best quarterback in the NFL this season. But I don't know if you can make the case that he's been the most valuable.
Let me complicate it a little bit further, then we'll get quicker. This happened back in 2019. Remember, Lamar and Russ were neck and neck in the MVP race, which I hate. I hate that it's like a horse race, right? And this guy's in first, this guy's in second, then it flips based off one game. That year, Russ's worst game, statistically, in this race, he was outstanding because, like, he made like 2 or 3 great throws that were dropped. Theoretically, if you're making the great throw, you're adding that value to the team. If DK Metcalf drops it, your team is letting you down. Aren't you inherently more valuable than if Lamar makes the same throw? I'm just thinking of this particular week. Lamar makes the same throw and his guy catches it. Like, you're adding the same value to the team, but because Russ's team let him down, he's actually more valuable to the team. Like, that's the Burrow argument. Because you're being let down by everyone else. So, like, again, Burrow last week and Russ, almost the same stat line, minus 100 yards, but similar stat line, great stat line, and Burrow's doing it behind this horrible offensive line, terrible pass protection in that game, and Pittsburgh has great pass blocking in that game. Burrow's doing more with what he was given there. So the guy that actually has the worst team is theoretically adding more value, which is, again, Josh Allen this year is doing less than he's ever done before. Lamar Jackson is playing better than he's ever done before, or ever played previously. And, you know, everybody's like, well, Josh Allen's the MVP and Lamar Jackson isn't because the team's winning. So, I don't know. Anyway, Burrow's playing great. Logan Wilson's out for the season for Cincinnati. Cowboys are playing better these last couple weeks. Micah Parsons versus Amarius Mims at right tackle could be an absolute mismatch if Micah wants to take over the game.
The other side as well. I mean, anywhere, really. Micah Parsons is still that guy, and the Bengals' offensive line isn't great. Burrow could be under pressure a lot in this game relative to what he's been for a lot of the season. But it's the same story. Like, Burrow needs to be incredibly good for the Bengals to win these games, and this could be a game where Dallas's defense actually causes problems for him.
The chat saying if game-winning plays are criteria for MVP, then more kickers should be MVP.
Yeah, which is why I don't think that's a particularly good way of measuring it.
Have we talked about this game enough?
We've barely talked about this game because we've been talking about Joe Burrow and MVPs.
Yeah. It's kind of a wild season for Cincinnati. We've talked about that a ton, of course, but the defensive regression, the defense has looked good when they've played awful offenses, right? They've looked bad against any kind of competent offenses, but bad offenses, like they did well against the Giants. Like they've got a chance to have success against Cooper Rush and the Cowboys, but Cincinnati's defense letting them down, losing 4 games after scoring 33 in games where they've scored 33. Lose Logan Wilson now to the season, as I mentioned, at linebacker. I do think Trey Hendrickson has a chance to have success against whoever ends up at left tackle for Dallas. They've had Tyler Guyton in and out and benched and injured, and left tackle is a major issue for Dallas right now. I think Hendrickson, underrated. I mean, the fact that the Bengals have Hendrickson, Defensive Player of the Year candidate, Jamar Chase, Offensive Player of the Year candidate, Burrow should be an MVP candidate, and they're still 4-8. It's wild. At some point, it's got to reverse. Maybe it's next year. But Cincinnati should be far better than this against a backup quarterback in Dallas, where the Cowboys have been awful this year.
Yeah, and that's the other element is that, we were speculating maybe Cooper Rush did just need to knock the rust off, and actually he's a better quarterback than his debut suggested. But against the Giants, even though they won the game, he didn't play well at all. And they relied, I know there were a couple of bad drops in there by CeeDee Lamb in particular, but they relied on defense and the run game in that game. Ironically, because their run game has been terrible this year. But Rico Dowdle went off for 100 yards, which broke a big streak of no 100-yard rushers, I think, for Dallas. But Cooper Rush, he was much better in week 2 of his play time, but week 3 he went back to being Cooper Rush.
All right, let's make some picks.
Cincinnati.
I'll also take Cincinnati to cover the 5.5, as will Harry. Monday Night Football. Simpsons game. Should be fun.
Simpsons.
Carolina Panthers at the Philadelphia Eagles. It's Sunday at 1. Eagles favored by 12.5. Man, we've been raving about Bryce Young in recent weeks. Now going up against the 10-2 Eagles. The Eagles are as hot as any team in the NFL. And we've been talking about a collision course between the Eagles and the Lions. Can Bryce continue his success? 4 weeks in a row, he's played pretty well. Can he do that again against a very good Eagles defense?
Yeah, I think the difficulty level for him has been ramping up in terms of the teams he's been facing. The Giants are not a terrible defense. The Chiefs are they're a pretty good defense, not a great defense. And then Tampa Bay, okay, they struggle at times, but it's at least an unusual defense to face. Now you're facing a legitimate elite defense for the first time. So again, can he continue this upward trajectory? Which, again, has reached the point where it's no longer just good on a curve. It's just good, period. The last couple of weeks, he's been genuinely excellent as a quarterback and even better than the stats. And the stats have been pretty good for the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, can Bryce Young keep it going against a really, really good defense that can cause problems both up front, like Jalen Carter is nigh on unblockable when he wants to be. That pass rush can cause problems. And then the back end, which has been extremely good, really led by those 2 rookies.
Carolina, too, so they've been far more competitive. But everything you mentioned, I think Eagles' defensive line can have success. I don't know if Carolina can get any pressure. We talk about Kansas City kind of playing. Kansas City's the whole thing is wild because it's like Carolina got no pressure all year except against Kansas City. And it was like, are the Panthers, can they create pressure now? And they didn't get much quick pressure against Baker Mayfield last week. They only did it against Kansas City. I don't know if Carolina's got, this feels like a big mismatch. Eagles offensive line, their whole offensive line against the Panthers defensive front. And it feels like one of those where maybe Carolina hangs in there and then the whole fourth quarter Saquon Barkley narrative takes over. Keep leaning on him. That's worked well in a lot of games.
Yeah.
Washington Thursday Night Football, the Rams, and then even last week against the Ravens. It's just back and forth, uneven offense from Philadelphia, and Saquon breaks off a big run. I think they have a chance to have a similar game flow in this one. I think the one difference is unless they can heat up Jalen Hurts a little bit, I think Carolina's done a decent job picking their spots as far as blitzing and heating up the quarterback. They're going to have to do that, I think, more and more against Hurts because he'll just sit back in the pocket, find A.J. Brown, and I don't think Carolina has much of a chance with just a pure four-man rush against the Eagles.
I definitely think it's going to be another Saquon MVP narrative game where they just dominate the second half. Carolina's defense is the worst defense in the NFL this year at yards before contact per attempt. They are just getting wrecked before contact. That's effectively the proxy for the blocking versus defensive line battle, right? The trench battle. So if the Eagles are able to do what they've done to a lot of good teams, good defenses, keep leaning on them, then the third and the fourth quarter, they just create those massive lanes. Saquon makes one move against a linebacker or safety, and he's off to the races for a touchdown. I mean, he could have another, $150, ice the game, make them go away by a couple of scores late and just dominate.
Intern Anthony over here, who gives us some notes every week and helps steer us in the right direction on some things, highlight some talking points here and there, gives some good insight for us. And sometimes he just puts something in our documentation here where he just wants to see the world burn.
Ah.
And so it's Anthony's fault here. I'm just merely the messenger.
Mm-hmm.
The Saquon Barkley could be in line to break the NFL rushing record against the Giants. Against the Giants. In a year where some stuff's gone against the Giants.
Yeah.
Some narrative stuff has gone the opposite way for the Giants. Could you imagine? And first off, 17 asterisk. 17-game schedule. I'm putting you on notice counting stats.
If he doesn't
You're
break
getting
it
an
by
asterisk. It's a 17-game schedule.
If he doesn't break it by the 16th game, it doesn't count.
Yes.
In Steve's eyes.
That's correct. Because we're over here, this is amazing. Ashton Genty's going to break Barry Sanders' record in like 4 more games than Barry Sanders. Like, that matters. But could you imagine if Saquon Barkley breaks the rushing record against the Giants?
I just want to see the shots of sad John Mara if that happens. I mean, the dude was bummed at just the concept of losing Saquon Barkley ever at the time on Hard Knocks. Can you imagine him having to sit there, watch Saquon Barkley break the rushing record against his team? Would be phenomenal content.
Yeah.
Here for it.
That'd be something. I'm looking forward to this game. 12.5. Does that feel like a lot? The Panthers are a far more competitive team right now. They were up losing overtime to the Bucs. Easily could have won that game. Almost beat the Chiefs a couple weeks ago. And again, I think to sum up Bryce Young, I don't know if he's going to become a star. I don't know if he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. All I know is he's playing competent NFL quarterback, and I didn't say there was no weaknesses. I said there's no limitations the other day. Right? What?
It's good clarification.
Yeah. I mean, there's no part of his game that's like throwing the ball down the field, throwing the ball on the run, in structure, outside of structure, running the ball when is needed. The guy's playing quarterback extremely well. And as you mentioned on the show, PFF big time throws, 9 over the last 2 weeks. No one has more.
Leads the NFL.
This is night and day, like the way he played earlier in the year.
In the last 2 weeks, the best graded quarterback in the NFL per PFF is Joe Burrow. The second best graded quarterback in the NFL is Bryce Young, and he has 4 more big-time throws than Joe Burrow, with the same number, which is 1, turnover-worthy plays.
Bryce Young, MVP.
I mean, in the last 2 weeks, it's like genuinely, Bryce Young has played top-level football in the last couple of weeks. Again, we took a lot of crap, and probably reasonably so, for being too positive with our praise, just signs of life. Hey, look, Bryce, this is better than it was when he got benched. Look at this throw. 1. Now it's genuinely just good. It's not good on a curve. It's not good for a guy that looked like ass early in his career. It's just good. He's been playing very well, but now you got to do it against one of the best defenses in the NFL. It is a big line. I do, however, think that it maybe ends up going that way in that sort of late, like the style of the Philadelphia-Washington game, right, where it's kind of close, it's tight, and then Philadelphia in the fourth quarter just hammers them with a couple of touchdown runs from Saquon. So I'm going to go with the Panthers to cover it, but I definitely can see it going that way.
my initial instinct was Philly. All the raving I've been doing about Bryce Young. And I don't know. I'll take the Eagles. Oh, so many points. Harry's going to take Carolina. Last thing I want to say about this, though, like this could be the most important game that determines what Carolina does in the draft. I think they're already maybe there where, okay, we're rolling in with year 3 of Bryce Young. If he at least holds his own against this Eagles defense the way they're playing, especially if he's getting rushed a ton, Jalen Carter and, in company.
I mean, I still think
this could be one. I mean, look, there's more games to be played, but if you do it against this type of defense, I think it's proven a lot.
Sure. I mean, it would be a big statement for him if he's able to play at the same level that he's played the last couple of weeks against the Eagles. I still think he needs to not drop off in the last few games of the season.
Sure.
And at least maintain a level somewhere around here. But yeah, this would be a huge statement. I mean, this is the best defense he's faced. So if he is able to play at that level, i.e., a top 10 level quarterback against the best defense he's faced, it's tough to argue against that. I mean, that's a legitimate signal that not only is he improved, he's good. Like because remember, like everybody is chasing not just can the guy start and not be an embarrassment. It's can he actually be a top level quarterback against everybody. This would be the first statement if he's able to do it this week that he's that caliber. He is who you thought he was. He is the guy that deserved to be taken at the top of the draft and can go up against the best defense in the NFL and play well.
And by the time we're playing this game, it could be the Eagles. Like if Detroit loses tonight on Thursday night, it could be the Eagles playing for the number 1 seed here.
The 1 seed
in this game. We're thrilled to be sponsored by our friends at Circa Resort and Casino, one of the premier destinations for sports fans in Las Vegas. And we're going to be there for the finale of the regular season, broadcasting from Circa, checking out Stadium Swim, the very best place to watch games, and the Legacy Club, which includes some of the very best views in Vegas. So, yeah, we went out there before the season. Love going to Circa, love the whole experience there. And we're asking you to come hang out as well. So week 18, I believe we're going to be there the whole weekend, probably Friday through Sunday. Hanging out, there'll be Saturday games in the NFL. They flex them in, right? So there'll be 2 games on Saturday and then the whole slate on Sunday. And then, probably just go live right from there for the last regular season show of the game, of the season.
Phenomenal place to be watching football games from. I'm extremely excited, whether it's the Stadium Swim setup outside, whether it's the sportsbook inside. Place is absolutely nuts. The casino, the resort itself is ridiculous. And as we said, life-changing showers, So if you want to experience that at any point, it's a good place to go.
It's all great over at Circa. So come join us. You can sign up at the link in the show's description on YouTube. So if you're only listening on audio, go to the Check the Mic YouTube channel. At least click on here and get to the link. It's circalasvegas.com/huddle-up at Overhang. And then there's a drop down. You click the Los Angeles weekend because it's Chargers Raiders that weekend. So you click that weekend in the drop down box and sign up. Come hang out over at Circa week 18 with us over here at Check the Mic. I'm also hearing some rumors that 33rd team, we've got quite the Rolodex over here. We have a lot of people associated with 33rd team, former players, former coaches. I feel like I'm hearing they're trying to gather up some of these big names to come hang out with us that weekend.
Nice.
So
you can meet people even more important than us.
Way more important than us.
Wow.
Right? Former NFL coaches, GMs, players, whoever it is. I don't know. I can't promise anything, but trying to rally the troops for this weekend, week 18 over at Circa. All right, let's go. Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rematch from 2 weeks ago. This whole week is just, hey, these teams played 2 weeks ago. Just replay the analysis. Pittsburgh's favored by 6.5 here. Lost in the Winter Wonderland game to Cleveland on Thursday Night Football a couple weeks ago. 3-9 Browns, 9-3 Steelers.
Yeah, I don't know why you're so upset by that. It was a good game.
It was great. There's so many
Let's run it back.
Scheduling iterations. Why do teams play twice in 3 weeks? We don't need it. You just don't need it.
Yeah. I mean, gone are the days when the schedule was done by Burt Bell on his dining room table or whatever.
They would never let this happen.
No, but I think
this happens like 5 times a year now.
I think Burt had fewer things to juggle with the schedule than currently exists,
Yeah, like Christmas games,
I just think
Wednesday games.
I think we've reached saturation point when there's only so many things you can actually accommodate in the schedule, and at some point something is going to happen that looks a little bit janky, and in an ideal world you wouldn't do. And this is one of them, where teams play twice in 3 weeks. So live with it.
So what are you looking for in this one? I gotta check. Is there snow in
I mean,
Pittsburgh?
look, we've said it before. Jameis is the most entertaining quarterback in the NFL by a distance. He is the most fascinating quarterback to watch. He is the living embodiment of Jesus take the wheel. Just eyes closed, hope for the best. Eyes closed or just trust the LASIK. And we'll see what happens. And sometimes it will be giant deep bomb touchdowns. Sometimes it will be missing a wide open Jerry Jeudy by 3 yards. Sometimes it will be an accidental pick six. You know, you never know what you're going to get. It's just spin the wheel, and Jameis is going to let it go.
See if the Lord answers the pick six prayer.
See if the Lord answers the pick six prayer.
It'll be like a strip sack instead, because Nick Herbig's on the other side.
It's of a variety of the Alan Shepard. Is that Alan Shepard? Is that the astronaut fighter pilot guy's thing? His prayer was like, basically, please don't let me screw up. It's of a variant.
It's a good one. Safe prayer. Last time they played, too, remember, it wasn't snowing in the first half. Myles Garrett had 3 sacks in the first half, was dominating. We highlight the Myles Garrett versus, it wasn't just Dan Moore, but we highlight that matchup all the time.
Alan Shepard is said to have coined the phrase, "Dear Lord, please don't let me fuck up," during his historic spaceflight in 1961. So it's the same idea.
I don't think that was. Yeah. Okay. So that's Jameis's prayer.
The Alan Shepard prayer, the Jameis prayer. Deliver me from pick sixes.
It's not exactly the Lord's prayer or the way Jesus instructed, but
no,
here we are.
But it's everyone has their own way.
Do they now? So we're going to keep an eye on the turnovers for Jameis. Again, let me say this. Same thing I say about Russ. Raising the ceiling of the Steelers offense. Jameis does the same thing with the Browns.
Sure.
Raises the ceiling.
And
I mean, the floor's low too.
Yeah.
It could, the elevator could also lose service and just collapse. But the floor is higher. You can get to a higher floor.
There's no broader range of outcomes than Jameis Winston in football.
And look, if we're being honest about it, they haven't had a great run game over the last few weeks. Cleveland, protection they still have issues there, but they're still able to create some explosive plays, and I think it's going to be a good competitive game.
Yeah, Nick Chubb coming back from his injury is a fantastic story. I mean, that was a devastating knee injury. Looked horrific. He doesn't look like Nick Chubb, however.
The same.
He doesn't have the same explosiveness yet. Maybe it'll come back, but it's not there at the moment. And that's a big thing, right? Because he is getting the majority of the workload. Honestly, right now, Jerome Ford deserves a much larger part of that workload because he's a more explosive, more dynamic back right now. Nick Chubb is getting it, I think, in deference to being Nick Chubb, to being everything that he's been previously. But right now, on merit, he's a drag on that run game because he doesn't have that explosiveness. He's got some power. He can make the right read, make the right cut. But he's just not as dynamic as he used to be.
Nick Herbig has been just a stud off the edge, opposite TJ Watt. TJ Watt, what do you have, a couple sacks last week? He still doesn't have crazy production this year, but he gets all the attention every single week. And the Alex Highsmiths and Nick Herbigs of the world have taken advantage of the one-on-ones. Those one-on-ones this week, Jermaine Ifedi has been filling in at left tackle for the Browns these last few weeks. Another big mismatch opportunity for Pittsburgh.
That's the other thing to watch coming into the rematch, right? Is remember last time they played, the snow stopped Myles Garrett from having one of those games where he racks up, a stupid number of sacks, and basically goes on to threaten the record based off one game alone. He had 3 in the game. They asked Mike Tomlin at halftime, like, hey, how are you going to stop Myles Garrett? And he was like, there's nothing more we can do. Like, we're dedicating all the bodies to him. He's just winning anyway. He's a great player. And then the snow came down. That really slowed him down. And he was still a factor, but he wasn't able to be the game-wrecking presence that he was in the first half. Meanwhile, all the attention the Browns were giving TJ Watt actually was working, and they did manage to stop him having a particularly significant impact in the game. And it was Nick Herbig that was able to make the play, on the other side because of all the one-on-one attention he was getting. So now what does that look like in the second go-around? Does the same thing hold true? Is Cleveland's plan against TJ Watt going to keep him relatively quiet? And do the Steelers have a better chance or a better plan against Myles Garrett? Because the first week, certainly for the first half, he was basically unstoppable.
Russell Wilson currently highest PFF grade since 2020. It's not reaching the 2020 status. If we go back through Russ's career, beginning 2019, that was what I referenced earlier in the show. Remember, that was the best year he'd had. MVP caliber, tailed off a little bit toward the end. 91.9 PFF grade. Start of 2020, Russ was on a ridiculous run of awesome the first 8 weeks of the season. Since the second half of 2020 through last year, though, mediocre at best, right? Playing the best football that he's played since the beginning of 2020 right now, in addition to just generally attacking down the field. Pittsburgh running a lot more play action. I don't know if you saw Colt McCoy's breakdown with Josh Norris. Colt does a really good job just breaking down pure X's and O's and talking about how they were just spamming 4 verts and they just ran it over and over and over again. And it was like it was just an oversimplified, let's lean into what Russell Wilson does. You're either going to fire a seam, pick the best one-on-one matchup, or check it down. Right. And they have gotten back to, and you could just see the difference where last year it's like wheels are turning and doesn't know, where to go with the ball or what to do, or he's checking down too early. Just like this, just not fitting well with Sean Payton, didn't fit well with Nathaniel Hackett. Feels like Arthur Smith, right? We oversimplified it and said, Justin Fields isn't taking these downfield shots. Russ can do it. Go and do it. But that's kind of how they've done it. It's not oversimplified. It's what they're doing, taking shots down the field, and Russ is making a lot of good decisions and giving them chances to make big plays.
I also kind of wonder if remember we were saying that, or I made the point at one stage that the shift in the NFL towards Vic Fangio coaching tree defenses, all those too high coverage shells, Brandon Staley's defense, like all these defenses were the ones that caused Russell Wilson the biggest problems because they were specifically designed to take away those explosive plays.
Yep.
All of a sudden this year, the league is shifting away generally from those Fangio defenses. Obviously, Fangio himself is cooking with the Eagles, but they're shifting away from those towards more disguise-based defenses where they're actually not playing too high a lot, but they're showing it or they're rolling from one to the other. And actually, maybe the league is now shifting back towards a style of defense that will help the way Russell Wilson wants to play the game, whereas over the last couple of years, it's shifted away from that. And that coincides with Russell Wilson's best play beforehand, worst play in the middle, and now getting back to something like his best. It would be a hell of a coincidence if it wasn't related, but it could be possible.
There's that. I mean, he's using play action way more than he did in Denver. I mean, there's a few things, and now you're getting the high big-time throw rate, over 6%, low turnover-worthy play rate. That's kind of old Russell Wilson.
Do we have a PrizePicks projection on the number of fights that George Pickens is going to get into with Browns DBs in this game?
8.5. Just 8.5.
I'll go less than 8.5, but it'll definitely be a couple.
Should add that to the Aetna health insurance projection that we have here. Okay. 6.5, though. Spread for Pittsburgh here. Where are you going to go?
Going with the Steelers.
I was going to take Cleveland. I hate all the matchups, though.
I hate all the lines. This week.
I'm changing.
Going 6.5. I'm going the Steelers to cover by a touchdown.
Changing to Pittsburgh now. Take the Steelers. Harry's going to take the Steelers as well. The snow's not going to even the playing field in this game. I didn't get the weather report. Anybody got a weather report for Pittsburgh? Chicago at San Francisco. Let's talk about that. Sunday at 4:25. It's the other feature game. Is this the feature game? Is this more featured than Bills-Rams? There's only 3 games in that window.
Yeah.
You don't care.
No.
Bears-Niners. Niners by 3.5. They're 5-7. Bears 4-8.
Well, now
to prepare for this, I'm going to watch some mid-'80s Bears-Niners matchups.
Okay. With the millstone of Eberflus free from around the necks of the Chicago Bears, will they actually be able to win one of these close games that they keep coming back in?
We got the interim OC bump a couple weeks ago. Now you get the interim head coach bump.
At some point, they need to figure out what is the lever to pull to stop getting wrecked in the first half, so they need to execute these comebacks that they almost do every time in the first place.
True.
Bunch of teams have really run it up on them early, and then they have managed to execute the comeback. But it's like the Joe Burrow thing, right? When you're so far in a hole, you really don't give yourself many margin for error. any margin for error. So any mistake is basically the reason you lose the game. But really, the reason you lost the game happened in the first quarter when you were just getting destroyed. Like, the reason the Bears lost that game was not because Matt Eberflus had a meltdown. It was because for the first half, the Lions looked like a team that was in like a completely different conference than, like, they were an FBS team facing an FCS team.
Good reference.
And that was the difference. Like, that was the reason Chicago lost that game, not because they flubbed a 30-second time clock management problem.
It was a miracle that they were within 2 scores after all of that mess.
That's what I'm saying.
They gave up 3 field goals and a touchdown rather than being down 30-0.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, then that's a perfect dynamic here because you have Kyle Shanahan who loves to get out to 10-point leads and, you know, blows those leads more than anyone else. And you have Chicago who likes to fall behind and try to make late comebacks. Did it against Minnesota, Detroit,
so really,
Green Bay.
Everybody plays to type in this game. If San Francisco leads by double digits early and then Chicago successfully executes the comeback, and now that they don't have Eberflus, they actually get it over the line.
You also get, let's just play into the rumors and the narrative here. Kyle Shanahan's on the sideline for San Francisco. He's watching Brock Purdy and is like, he's got a little shoulder. He's got a little shoulder ding, you know, knows Brock Purdy's limitations. And he's watching Caleb Williams on the other side and he's thinking, ooh, what could I do with that? What could I do with that? Maybe, you know, gets those rumors going a little bit more. Kyle wants to work with Caleb. Kyle and Caleb in Chicago start working out the deal. Start working out the trade for Kyle Shanahan to get him to Chicago. He's got firsthand sight of Caleb Williams this week.
Yeah, just another glimpse of what he could have with that dual threat quarterback that he seems to covet.
Yeah. Just saying. What else about this football game?
Well, with
San Francisco's now missing, by the way. Christian McCaffrey's out for the season.
Yeah.
What's his face? Jordan Mason.
Yep.
What's his face?
Got hurt.
Jordan Mason out for the season. San Francisco's missing everybody.
Trent Williams still recovering, not participating. Huge part of the team.
These injury reports are wild. Every single starter
on
every team. Because the Niners, like, those guys are legitimately injured. I don't know who on Chicago is actually injured.
Well, the 49ers have the added problem of they appear to have been treating their injury report like a fictional story as opposed to the injury report. And so they appear to take liberties with their injury report, and Kyle Shanahan appears to be refusing to be pinned down to anything at any time. Remember, he was asked about somebody's injury way back when and was like, he could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I can't commit to anything, right? Well, asked about Nick Bosa this week, Shanahan, apparently, according to this is on 49erswebzone.com, head coach Kyle Shanahan expressed optimism that Bosa could return to action this weekend, but acknowledged the unpredictability of injury recoveries. So you're thinking, week to week. When asked if there's a chance if Bosa might not play again this season, Shanahan offered a candid response. I'm not God, but I think he's got a chance to play this week, Shanahan said on Wednesday. So I would think that would lead to getting a better chance each week, but I don't know the answer to that. So Shanahan, while pressed about whether Nick Bosa would be playing this week, wouldn't commit to him playing at all this season, which is kind of like, early in the season when Christian McCaffrey was like day to day, and then suddenly he was in Germany receiving treatment on 2 different Achilles. Everybody's hurt for the 49ers, and nobody has any idea when any of them are going to resurface.
Did you ever get to the bottom of how Fred Warner's got a broken ankle and he hasn't been on the injury report either?
No, they just stopped putting him on the injury report after week 5. He was on it. He fractured his foot, ankle, whatever it is. Appeared in the injury report for a week or 2.
Yeah, and then got hurt in the Patriots game on that
right.
He had the pick 6.
It was week 4 that he got hurt, and then he appeared in the injury report for the next couple of weeks, and then they just stopped putting him on there. And then in week 11 or 12, whatever it was, everyone was like, look at this Iron Man. It's now his 8th consecutive week of playing through a broken ankle. Wait, if he's been playing through a broken ankle, how has he not been on the injury report for the last couple of months?
I don't know those rules. When Nick Bosa's not in, I'm just checking out the PFF grades, and the 49ers 2 deep in the front 7. There's not a player graded over 61 this year. This is, I mentioned this coming into the season. It felt like the Niners were thinner than ever on the defensive line in particular. Just depth taking a hit. And I think we're starting to see that, in addition to the stars and scrubs idea that they are very star-laden. And if Deebo Samuel isn't as special as he was previously and all the other dudes are hurt, yeah, it's going to be tough.
Also, I mean, they're already down Javon Hargrave from the D-line. Like, it was already pretty thin and top-heavy, and then they lost Hargrave. So now it really was. I mean, Nick Bosa basically on his own was carrying that defensive line. You take him out of the line, and obviously it goes from, like, pretty good defensive line when Nick Bosa's there to now it's like Atlanta rivaling. It might be worse than Atlanta's. Like Atlanta,
Leonard Floyd's
their number one player is Matthew Judon versus Leonard Floyd. Like it's
similar. They're both good cleanup guys.
Yeah.
They're not good dominate one-on-one, but like if you have a
so
Bosa on the other side, you can tackle the quarterback.
It might genuinely go from like a top half pass rush to the worst pass rush in football if you take Bosa out of the lineup.
For fantasy people, it's Isaac Guerrero time. 4.3 speed with size. Next man up for the Niners rushing attack, Shanahan running attack. I think that he could have some success back there as well.
Sure.
He's been looking for speed back, Shanahan, for a while. Guerrero could be that guy.
He's been looking for he tends to look for the sort of physically impressive back, right? When he keeps drafting these guys that are, big, powerful, fast, and then it's actually an undrafted rookie who ends up surpassing him in the depth chart. And then obviously they traded for Christian McCaffrey. But he's sort of been looking for this type of back for a long time. It's just they have never made a huge impact.
And then last thing, want to see Caleb Williams continue to play free and easy and instinctual. And I think that's been much better these last few weeks.
Yep.
Niners by 3.5 here. I haven't made a pick for this one yet. I don't like this at all.
We go with the Bears. I just think the 49ers, they're not good when they're this banged up. Like I'm kind of past the point of expecting them to be a contender because they're missing too many of the players that make them contender.
I've gone from making excuses that they were 3 plays away from being 8-2 a couple weeks ago, which was true, but they have played way worse.
But it's all still true, but even since then, you've taken Trent Williams out of the lineup, Nick Bosa out of the lineup, Christian McCaffrey's back out of the lineup, Mason is out of the lineup. Like even from that point, they're missing 3 or 4 of their most important players.
Okay, I'll take Chicago.
Why am I talking you into better picks?
I don't know, man, but I'll take Chicago, as will Harry. I got to tell you about our friends over at GameTime, the best place to go find tickets for whatever you're looking for. This is what we use to get to college football games, NFL games around here. It is outstanding and has been really easy to use for us. GameTime Picks is incredible. It filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save money on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're looking for. You toggle the all-in pricing feature, which is awesome, shows the total up front, no surprise fees at checkout, no surprises with all-in pricing. Seat View is another great feature. You get the panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy it, and there's a lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Great deal there. And GameTime also has your purchase covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with GameTime. So all you got to do is download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code CheckTheMic, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CheckTheMic, CheckTheMic. $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. What time is it? GameTime.
Save money on tickets. No brainer.
That was good. That's good. Like
that could be their whole ad.
Add a tagline to the tagline. New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins favored by 6.5 here Sunday at 1:00 over under 44.5 by FanDuel.
Is it time for Tyrod Taylor? That's what people are asking.
Is it time for Tyrod?
That's what people are asking.
Nah, we've talked about it. I feel like let's try to preview this game without talking about Aaron Rodgers again. The offense is bad. I still don't think they scheme anything up. They're relying on one-on-ones on the outside, don't run the ball effectively, and finding new ways to win every single week. Historic run of finding new ways to win for the Jets.
Yeah. To lose or win?
To lose.
Yeah.
Finding new ways to lose. Yes, that's what the Jets have done. Miami on the other side, they beat bad teams, of which the Jets are one right now. They tend to beat bad teams, and they tend to do that at home. And look, Tua's playing really clean football, even in the cold. I think he settled down a little bit in Green Bay last week. Offense still finding their rhythm. Again, didn't put a ton of points on the board last week, but they're back at back at home where they've been tough to beat the last couple of years when Tua is healthy.
I think their defense has played pretty well as well.
Yeah.
Like Miami actually is a pretty good team right now. It's just that they've already dug themselves too deep a hole at that point. But you're right. Like, I think the narrative for Miami, probably all of the narratives probably still hold. They are a good team at beating up bad teams. They have yet to really prove that they can either beat the best teams in the NFL or really win in ugly conditions. Neither of which probably should be a factor in this game. So theoretically, Miami should just win as the better team. Their offense is good. Their defense is good. The Jets have all kinds of problems and are lurching from one disaster to the next. They are also, I think, incredibly mentally fragile, as we saw last week, that if anything goes against them in the game, they just crumble. So it's tough to find too many ways. Like, things need to go their way early and never go against them, I think, for the Jets to win this.
Yeah, the one thing that you would, if you're looking at what's been missing from Miami's offense, is the big-time throws from Tua, maybe those outside, just the deep shots to Tyreek Hill that they were hitting early last year. So the offense, I think overall, is similar. If you look at Tua's numbers, it's interesting. His passer rating is up to 108 this year. It was down at 99 last year if you include the playoffs. So a lot of the production's up, but it's just a different type of passing attacks. Yards per attempt are down a little bit. More Jonnu Smith, more underneath stuff. Interested to see if the Dolphins can get some of those deep shots going that they got earlier last year. His big time throw rate, Tua, was 5.8% last year, down to 2.8 this year. So that would kind of round things out for the way Miami's been playing.
Yeah, and the other thing is, are we ever going to get Tyreek Hill back? Right? Like, when was the last time Tyreek Hill had a dominant performance where he just absolutely cooked, explosive plays, big plays, production? None of it's been there. I mean, okay, Tua hasn't been there for a chunk of the season.
Is that a him thing? Is that an offense? Is it because the offense is just going other places?
Right. Is it teams figuring out how to stop this offense, forcing them to different reads? But, Tyreek Hill, the most dynamic and explosive playmaker in the NFL for the last several years, hasn't been this year.
Tua's average depth of target when his first year with Mike McDaniel was over 10, and kind of forgot about that. How much he was pushing it down the field. Last year it dropped to 8.1, and I feel like the visual I remember from last year more than anything is the deep in cut, the quick ins, the
right.
quick hitting stuff, with the occasional take the top off the defense type of deep shot. This year the average depth of target's down to 6.2. So you're talking almost, since McDaniel started with Miami, Tua's averaging 4 yards per target less than he did, like, per throw. So it's just a shorter passing attack. I'm not saying it's worse. It's been effective. It's just different than what it was.
But his average depth of target when targeting Tyreek Hill, according to PFF, is actually deeper this season than it was last season, both 11 to 12.
Yeah.
But Tyreek Hill's averaging 2 yards per route run less than last year. And last year, that number was up even higher than that for the majority of the year. It really tailed off at the end when he got hurt, and then they played in the ugly conditions. So, I mean, this is a shadow of what Tyreek Hill has been in the past.
Yeah, I think it's something to keep an eye on, because that's always my fear with Tyreek Hill. I think, over the last few years, honestly, there's not a receiver I would rather have on my team. I would take him over. I think I would take him over Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown over the last few years because of everything that Tyreek Hill could do. My fear was always, if he loses a step or if he's just off a little bit, does he have enough, that the other guys have enough to offset things, and, they're younger. What happens when Tyreek loses it a little bit? So just something to keep an eye on. Jets, see if they can win some games here.
See if they can win some games.
I don't think we're going to see Tyrod at all.
It could be another game for a big Chop Robinson game as well. The Jets' offensive line is banged up, particularly a tackle. Fashanu's been pretty good, I think. The other side might be a problem. So Morgan Moses has been battling injuries. Could be another consecutive, we've had a few of them now, Chop Robinson game.
Jalen Ramsey matchups against Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, always fun.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll watch. 6.5, is that too much? The Jets have been favored in most of their games this year, and of course haven't covered any of them.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Miami. I mean, I think like we talked it out, there's too many. They're better in most places, and I think the added part of the Jets being that emotionally and mentally fragile that, unless things go their way from start to finish, I think Miami wins fairly comfortably.
All right, Harry's taking Miami as well, but I'm going to take the Jets to keep it close. Even if they don't win, 6.5 feels like a lot. Jets are still better than a 3-9 team. Again, they just find ways to lose at the end. Las Vegas Raiders at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Bucks favored by 6.5. This is part of this Bucks potential run here, right? Falcons have to play the 10-2 Vikings. The Bucks are playing the 2-10 Raiders with a chance to, if the Vikings beat the Falcons, the Bucks are in first place with a win here against the Raiders. It's Sunday at 1:00. Bucks by 6.5 here.
Yeah, two, I think, fairly confusing teams. Like, I'm not sure what you're going to get out of either one of these teams in a given week. Baker Mayfield had been playing very well, had a couple of really good performances, really didn't play well against Carolina, but then did turn it on right at the end when he needed to tie the game up, and then in overtime. But their defense has been a bit of a mess. And then the Raiders, they were nowhere, and then actually gave the Chiefs a really good game and should have won that game, but for a miscommunication where they snapped the ball early and turned it over.
That's the other confusing thing about the Chiefs. I don't know if they give us false positives because teams tend to get, maybe play their best game, or I think teams balance between they play their best game, but they also make these late mistakes against the Chiefs to end up losing it. But they say, hey, you competed with Kansas City. Is that what the Raiders were last week? Aiden O'Connell, similar. How many times last year, Aiden O'Connell was great this week, and then they don't score against Minnesota? Oh, he's great this week. He was a roller coaster of effectiveness last year, and similar this year. He made some huge throws last week against Kansas City to put them in position for a potential game-winning field goal that they never kicked. So O'Connell, he's got some volatility to him as well.
A lot, yeah. There's an element of Jameis Winston to Aiden O'Connell. He is capable of a lot of big plays. When he had 4 big-time throws against Kansas City, he's also capable of some terrible turnover-worthy type plays as well. But I don't want to say that he necessarily raises the ceiling the same way that Jameis does, because I think Minshew, when he plays at his best, is actually capable of a very good game himself. But he definitely brings a lot of volatility to the table, which makes him inherently difficult to project and predict what you're going to get from Aiden O'Connell. It could be anything from what it looked like against the Chiefs, right? 300-plus yards, a couple of touchdowns, some big-time throws in there, to, a terrible game where there's almost nothing functioning and multiple turnover-worthy plays.
I think Tampa Bay's pretty straightforward. The defense has been not as good this year. The offense has had to put a ton of points on the board, and Tampa Bay went through a stretch where they played Baltimore, lost to Atlanta again, Kansas City, and San Francisco when San Francisco had players. And now they're in the stretch of playing the Giants, played a tough game against a different type of Panthers team. I think they're ready to go on a run here, as is Mike Evans, which is why he's in my PrizePicks lineup this week, which we'll talk about later.
So they were talking about that on the broadcast against the Panthers, and they were saying that they'd asked. I think they were talking about Baker. Maybe it was Baker, but he was saying that they effectively made the point the only person that doesn't care about the record is Mike Evans. Everybody else in the building thinks it's a really important thing and wants to get it from Mike Evans, including Baker Mayfield. I don't think it's ever a good thing when your quarterback is specifically wanting to force feed a wide receiver for reasons other than they're giving him that play, right? If you're specifically trying to get a guy the ball for non-footballing reasons, which effectively this is. And
it's more like if he's one-on-one, he's getting targeted, but that's also best for the Bucs offense.
At what point does that become a negative thing that you're trying to look for him or force him the ball when you wouldn't be otherwise if the record wasn't a thing? I don't think that played into Baker's game last week. It's not like all the bad decisions were targeting Evans. One of them was, but the other two weren't. So I don't think it was a problem last week. But I do wonder, if this is if this is a genuine focus for this offense, like we got to get Mike over 100 every week. Are we going to see some bad decisions with the ball or some forced throws that are not helpful?
You definitely could. I don't know if that was the reason necessarily for Baker's putting the ball in harm's way a couple times last week, but he went from the previous week against the Giants playing his cleanest game of the season to this week, or last week. I know he got hurt in the third quarter. Before that, though, he was already making some poor decisions. Comes back after the ankle injury, throws a pick. So Baker's he's been a roller coaster ride as well. I mean, I still think he's in the middle tier of quarterback, right? I don't think many people are putting Baker in the top 10, and they're not putting him below 25 right now. He's in that middle tier of quarterback who within a game and from a week-to-week basis can be extremely inconsistent, and so you always need the best version. And if they get just a decent version, I think they take care of business here against the Raiders.
Yep.
6.5. Where are you going here?
I'm going with the Bucks to cover 6.5.
I will also take the Bucks, as will Harry. I got to tell you about our friends over at PFF. The read that moved on me. Where did it go? PFF has you covered all season long with the best data, tools, and analysis in the game. Sign up for PFF Plus today to unlock all their famous player grades and premium stats. Push to the playoffs in your fantasy league with the in-season tools and award-winning rankings from fantasy expert Nathan Yonke. And stay connected to the next generation of talent with the very best NFL draft coverage on the planet. No matter what you're looking for, PFF Plus has what you need to make winning decisions. Visit PFF.com and sign up today for less than $10 per month. PFF Plus, powering winning decisions. And as you've heard here on the show many times, we also use PFF data, grades, analysis, whatever it might be, powered by PFF because we helped create it many years ago. So you can trust us. It's good stuff. PFF Plus. Go check it out right now. A couple more games to discuss. New Orleans Saints at the New York Giants. Sunday at 1. 4-8 Saints, 2-10 Giants. Over-unders 41.5.
Yeah, that's the thing to watch for this game.
What?
The over-under.
Yeah, it's low, meaning it's going to be less exciting. They don't know. It's tough to have a over-under that low when MVS is playing football, though.
Well, it's certainly a way of breaking it quickly. We're getting another Drew Lock game, it sounds like, at quarterback for the Giants.
All right, ready to get to the picks?
Drew Lock. So, like, everyone was kind of the cutlets thing was such a big deal, and then it's like, oh look, they overlooked Drew Lock, and that was probably a fair point to make, but it's one of those things where in an attempt to sort of criticize the move of going to cutlets directly, the number 3 QB, and bypassing number 2, I think Drew Lock was getting artificially inflated in a lot of people's eyes or comments. It's like Drew Lock has a fairly extensive history of being bad as well. Like, how good do you think the Drew Lock version of this offense is going to look? And against Dallas, it looked terrible outside of a couple of Drew Lock runs where they just didn't bother to account for him.
There's some Drew Lock truthers out there. He was always – I love
Drew Lock as a prospect, but at this point in his career, I'm out on expecting good things.
I think Lock – we talk about Jameis a lot and his volatility. I think there's the two spectrums of quarterback, like your safer type of quarterbacks and your boomer bust, your high volatility type of quarterbacks. He always landed in that bucket, and those guys are a little bit more intriguing because it's like, what if you just keep some of the good and some of the bad just disappears for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean,
that is intriguing with the arm talent that Drew Lock has.
He's 6'4", 230 pounds with a big arm who can run and is capable of big-time throws. I mean, that's a very enticing group of things to put together and say, hey, what about this guy?
And he did it. He led a fourth-quarter comeback against the Eagles last year when we thought that they were the Eagles.
Yeah.
On Monday Night Football for Seattle when he filled in for Geno Smith. He did some good stuff there.
Sure. And, there have been games or like last year was by far the most impressive version, I think, of Drew Lock we've seen in the NFL. And his overall PFF grade for the year was still 61. And he had more than twice the number of turnover-worthy plays to big-time throws. Like, Drew Lock is capable of flashing spectacular play. It's just that it's never lasted for any period of time in the NFL. And I see no reason to believe that it will continue to.
On the other side, Derek Carr's having a sneaky good season. It's just a weird season in New Orleans with the ebbs and flows of they won a few and they were the best team in the NFL after 2 weeks. this season.
Yeah.
The Saints.
And they had like, what was it, like a plus absurd point differential, like plus 45 or something after 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was absolutely wild. Then they lost 7 straight. Then they won 2 straight again. So it's just been a weird up and down season for the Saints. Kind of, they were up in the second half against the Rams, give up 21 second half points last week. They're just, the depth and everything that they haven't built well over the last couple of years, I think has caught up to them. And all while Derek Carr's played pretty well, and they brought in, Valdez-Scantling to become a deep threat and offset some of the wide receiver injuries that they have. I mean, Carr's got the number 3 passing grade in the league. Now, a lot of that's front-loaded, and he missed some time.
Right. Front-loaded
from earlier in the year, but like the totality of Carr's season's been solid. And I know you made the point coming into the year, if you look at the second half last year, it's like the last, 16 games of Saints Derek Carr has been pretty solid. They will miss Taysom Hill, who's out for the season now, and had brought just a ton to that offense this year. So
yeah,
they'll miss him.
I mean, obviously it's not as simple as this, but I think you can paint a lot of the Saints' success and failures this season just simply relative to the injuries that they've had. And it sort of sucks.
And they're not equipped to handle it, is the point.
And there are some teams that are, and it kind of sucks, right? Because everyone deals with injuries. Some teams are hit harder with them than others. And a lot of times you end up reaching the tail end of the season. And the story effectively in terms of like who's good, who's bad, who's a contender, who's not, it's really just like how healthy is everybody. It's ridiculous that that's the way the game comes sometimes. But like it's a really powerful variable in all this is simply how healthy is your team at this point in the season. And the Saints have been really banged up at various important positions. The offensive line, their receiving core, Taysom Hill, whatever he is in this offense, is a really important player for them. These are really significant players that have been banged up and missing. The Saints got some of those offensive linemen back, and when they did, it was an improved offensive line and was a big part of Derek Carr being a little bit better. Valdez-Scantling helped offset the loss of Rashid Shaheed. So, the Saints, I think, got a lot of players back, but they're still pretty banged up.
Giants missing Dexter Lawrence now, so we don't get to talk about him every single week. They're banged up on the defensive front as well. Got hurt a lot in the Thursday game last week against Dallas. Let's make some picks.
Where am I going?
Saints by 3.5 here on the road.
Going with the Saints.
Yeah, I'm moving to the Saints as well. Take the Saints to cover, as will Harry. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. Titans favored by 3.5 here. 2-10 Jags at the 3-9 Titans over under 39.5 per FanDuel. Trevor Lawrence officially put onto IR. Season essentially over for him.
Pretty much.
Coming off the concussion, had the other injury that he was dealing with as well. So unfortunately, we only got to see like 10 passes from him before the injury on Sunday. So Mac Jones time once again for Jacksonville.
Yeah, he was coming off a shoulder injury, non-throwing shoulder, I think, coming into that game. Initially, the way he reacted to that hit from Al-Shahir, I thought it was his shoulder that had gone again. Like I thought he was pointing to his shoulder, like, no, my shoulder's done. But actually, it was just a fencing response. He was unconscious at the time. So yeah, shut him down from Jacksonville's perspective. What the hell? Like there's nothing to play for at this point in the season. You might as well protect him and go again. But it does mean you're back to this Mac Jones offense against, a pretty decent Tennessee defense. And I think one that can probably cause some problems for Mac Jones. Get after them, push the pocket, cause some problems pass rushing. And their coverage, I think, is good enough to hold up on the back end.
And you got Will Levis watch on the other side. Continuing to get the ball down the field and play pretty well these last couple weeks overall.
Yeah, he really has. I mean, again, I think the damage had been done, unfortunately, for his perspective. By the time he'd actually started showing encouraging signs, they'd already effectively determined he's not the guy and they're going to move on. And I don't really think he can rescue that. But he is. He's playing a lot better. Like if this was what he was doing all season long, I think he'd have had a shot to keep that job.
At least he's playing the way you wanted him to.
Yeah.
11 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah. This is the Will Levis that I think I was sort of hoping or expecting to see coming into the season. It's just that we spent the first month of the year being a meme instead of this.
Jags pass rush, I think, has a chance to, every single week. Titans offensive line has some issues. If you got Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen have a chance to get after him. I mean, that's definitely one of the arguments in favor of Levis, if we're going to use that for other quarterbacks, is he's 2 years in a row now played
still not a great situation.
Pass protection.
Right. They, to their credit, they tried to fix it. They threw a lot at that offensive line. They brought in receivers. They did try and kind of upgrade that massively for Levis this year, but they were coming from a position of this has been the worst offensive line in football for at least 2 straight years. It's hard to fix that in an offseason. Even if you throw a lot of bodies at it, it was probably never likely to get to jump from there to being a pretty good line. It's still not a great one. It's still, I think, a limiting factor.
Only other, I think, interesting thing to watch, I really kind of like Parker Washington coming out as a receiver at Penn State. A breakout game last week for him with 6 catches, over 100 yards, and a touchdown, complimenting Brian Thomas Jr. I think Parker Washington has a chance to be a solid 3, 2/3 type of receiver, more of a 3. But, we're at the time of the season where it's like, all right, I always say, who's a part of the rebuild? Who's a part of Jacksonville's rebuild? Who's a part of Tennessee's rebuild? You add another complimentary receiver. I mean, I know they have Gabe Davis. I'd still rather have, and they have, we'll see what happens with Christian Kirk, have another high volume type of receiver opposite Brian Thomas Jr. that you can trust, and Parker Washington as a potential 3. So kind of an audition for him.
Yeah, and in any given game, Brian Thomas Jr. can be the difference between winning and losing if Mac Jones is able to connect on one of those throws. I mean, I think Mac Jones is less likely to even take the shot than Trevor Lawrence is, and neither one of them has necessarily been taking advantage of Brian Thomas Jr.'s sort of full capabilities and full openness in some of these plays. But even just last week, they missed Brian Thomas on a deep shot. If Mac Jones can connect on one of those, that can be a complete game-changing play.
Mac played better after that miss. That was early when he came in. He played a lot better last week, and he's kind of a streaky quarterback. He hasn't been on a good streak in a couple of years. But when he gets hot, he's that type of guy who goes 25 of 28, has these super high, efficient type of games. So, it's always potentially in the cards for Mac Jones.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Yeah, not a massively exciting game, this one.
There's a couple of these 1 o'clock games at this point in the season where there's just less on the line. Right. Other than draft position.
And we got to clear some space to get to the best Thursday night game ever.
We could get to draft position talk. Titans by 3.5 here. Where are you going?
I'm going with the Titans to cover that.
What did I say?
You also said the Titans.
All right, I'll take the Titans. I lost it for a second, as will Harry. All right, before we get to Detroit and Green Bay, going to talk prize picks. I gave my lineup yesterday. We'll review that in a minute, but it's your turn to provide your prize picks lineup here for week 14. As always, you can download the prize picks app and use the code Check the Mic, $50 instantly when you play $5.
'Tis indeed my time. And I'm going with a player from the game we were just talking about. I believe that the Will Levis improvement is legit. I think he's shown the ability to connect, particularly with Nick Westbrook-Akine and some of those deep shots. I think we're going to get more than 203.5 passing yards for Will Levis. I think he's actually going to have a pretty good day against that Jacksonville defense. I think he'll put up some yardage and some points.
I like that.
So First one, Levis more than 203.5.
Actually sad I didn't take that now.
Then I am making the mistake that I have made several times.
QB rushing yards?
And refuse to make again. No, I'm putting it all on the line today. So it could already be blown to hell by the time Thursday. Levis ever steps foot in the field. And I'm also making the mistake of trying to navigate and diagnose the Green Bay offense and figure out where the production is going to come from.
Same.
Tucker Kraft, superstar tight end, who was the second tight end they drafted in his own draft class, but has become a really productive and incredibly difficult to stop player. Tucker Kraft is going to get in the end zone more than a half receiving and rushing touchdowns. Tucker Kraft is going to score. He's going to be one of the players that does score for Green Bay against the Detroit defense. That's my second pick.
And I hope it's a tight end around to get you
That
there.
would be nice.
The rushing touchdown counts.
I'll take it any which way. Any way it comes, I'll happily take a Tucker Kraft touchdown. As long as it's not a passing one, that doesn't count.
That does not count.
Don't want that. And then all my picks for a while have been positive. I think that's been a mistake. I've
from you, yeah.
Yeah, I've let go of some of my trademark negativity. So I'm going back to the negativity by saying that Xavier Legette is going to have less than 42.5 receiving yards. remember the Panthers
against
and
the
this
Eagles.
resurgent Bryce Young Panthers offense, they're going up against the Eagles defense. Liget has been inconsistent, shall we say. Has had some good plays, but has also been shut down quite a bit. There's nowhere to hide him in this. Like they're amazing in the slot with Cooper DeJean. They're amazing out wide with their corners. They've got pass rush. Like there's nowhere they can put Liget where he's going to have guaranteed production. So I feel like this might be a struggle for the big man.
The mistake I made a couple weeks ago, taking his less than projection against Kansas City.
Right.
That's all right though. It's okay. You're right.
This
right
one at
line of
least,
thinking.
that one at least can't fail until the Sunday. The Tucker Craft thing can be all done by tonight.
Good line of thinking on all of them. I like it. I kind of like some of those picks there. Do you want to review?
So, in totality, in summary, Will Levis, more than 203.5 passing yards. Tucker Craft, Green Bay tight end, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. And then Xavier Liget, the big rookie Carolina Panthers receiver, less than 42.5 receiving yards.
All right, we'll get to my lineup that we unveiled yesterday. I'm also looking at the Packers receivers and saying, let's do it. Jaden Reed, more than 46.5.
The good news for both of us
yards.
is that I think I saw Romeo Doubs already ruled out. So at least one of the confounding factors is off the table.
Got to throw to Jaden Reed. Got to throw to Tucker Craft. That'll be good. Mike Evans on the quest for 1,000. We're going to go more than 70.5 receiving yards. Might take him every week for the rest of the season now, unless the projection gets too high. And then I'm going back to Sam Laporta, more than 34.5 receiving yards. So I have two of these guys in the lineup for tonight's Thursday night game, which we're going to discuss right now. Again, shout out to PrizePicks for being the presenting sponsor on the show here. And you guys can get your $50 instantly. Use the code Check the Mic over at PrizePicks when you play your first $5. So it's Thursday night football. It's the Green Bay Packers at the Detroit Lions. The Lions are favored by 3.5. In this quest to become one of the best teams in the NFL for the Lions, something's changed over the last couple of years. You never got to see Lions primetime Thursday night games. I repeat this every year. It's just new. Every team would get a max of one Thursday game, and it was Lions at Thanksgiving at 12:30, and that's it. Now they're so good, you need more primetime Lions games. We all need them. We all need more primetime Lions games because they're America's team now, Sam.
America's team. Well, this is an unusual one where both teams are coming off a full week's rest. Because the Thursday game, usually somebody's coming off a short week. Yeah. At least somebody, if not both teams.
But it's like 3 games in 12 days for both teams when you add them up. So it's kind of a tough stretch, but it's also now they get to get through this and get a little extra rest.
Because they played on Thanksgiving, they've had the full week of rest each. So we are getting 2 high-quality teams fully rested, which might make this the best Thursday night game on paper they've ever had, based off those kind of variables.
You are hyping it up. This is
right. I mean, think about it. Normally, it's 2 crappy
John
teams coming
Anik
off.
level, Joe Rogan level of hyping up this fight. UFC 9,773 of all the ones that we've seen. This is the one that is the best. This is the best Thursday night football matchup of all time.
I mean, normally it's 2 fairly crappy teams coming off short rest. Now it's 2 very good teams coming off a full week of rest. That has to make it better.
It's great. No Thursday night slop tonight.
No Thursday night
and
slop.
It won't be sloppy like the Green Bay game where it was all rainy and windy and awful
right
a couple weeks ago.
So it's just nothing but positives here. Nothing but positives.
It is just a powerhouse matchup. I think for me, I mean, we talk about the quarterbacks a lot as far as the matchup. Jordan Love maybe playing the best football of his season so far. Detroit, I can't get over, like, there wasn't a yard. They just executed everything at the beginning of the game, but they just stalled in the red zone. And when I think about, we brought this up a couple weeks ago, how could Detroit lose? It's turnovers and just red zone quirkiness, right? If you just get stalled in the red zone or Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles on the way, into the end zone or at the 10-yard line, you can lose.
Yeah, I mean, that fumble
if you don't have
huge.
Quirky stuff. I feel like Detroit might be just the best all-around team in the league.
Yes. Though I think, Lions fans actually have been making this point that I don't know that enough has been talked about their defensive injuries. Like, they have been very banged up on defense.
The list is out there.
Yeah, and while we're talking about, hey, all these teams, the Saints, the 49ers, these teams that are being written off because they're so banged up. I mean, the Lions have had a lot of injuries on defense. Now, that's helped by the fact that their offense has been in pretty good shape overall. They've, They lost Taylor Decker for a week or two. Like they've not been 100% healthy, but generally the offense has been pretty healthy, and the offense is spectacular, so that will help. But the Jahmyr Gibbs fumble to stop them going up another touchdown against Chicago on Thanksgiving was a big part of keeping that game close enough. But the other part is in the second half, Detroit couldn't really stop Chicago, and that's why it became close. It's why it got down to the final few seconds, because the second half, the Bears had 245 yards of offense. This Detroit defense has been banged up. It couldn't keep them down, and that was what enabled them to close out or get close again. So that's the only concern for a game like this. Detroit's offense, I still think, in any given game should be nigh on unstoppable, and able to put up points, move the ball, all those kinds of things. And again, outside of weird turnovers, you would expect success from that side of the ball. The concern is Detroit's defense so banged up that this just becomes a monster shootout and they can't really slow down Green Bay?
Yeah, they've really had a plethora of injuries on that side of the ball.
Nice.
And they've overall played better than they were last year when they were healthier.
They've really
had Aiden Hutchinson.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, they deserve credit for riding over those injuries and not having it be a defining kind of factor of the season and shut down, and the defense becomes complete trash. And that's why Aaron Glenn is being talked about as a head coaching candidate in his own right, in addition to Ben Johnson on the offensive side. Yeah,
I think this is probably the best job Aaron Glenn has done. And because there were times last year where they were picked apart, but they would make really good second half adjustments, kind of like the old Cincinnati Lou Anarumo defense we'd always talk about. It's to me, it's just Brad Holmes and the depth that they have built on this team in making a shrewd move like trading for Zadarius Smith at the trading deadline. At some point, maybe it catches up a little bit until some of those guys come back, because it's a lot of inexperienced and just newer players playing on the defensive side of the ball. Even on offense too, having left tackle Dan Skipper filling in there and everything. But I trust Detroit's ability to move the ball. As long as Goff takes care of the ball, I think they'll have their success on that side. I think Green Bay could have success against this. As much as we've talked about Detroit's defense, Amik Robertson's been picked on a little bit these last few weeks, and Green Bay's really good with their receiver depth at being able to, create mismatches and find those weak spots. I think of all the ways that Detroit has overcome these injuries, I feel like Green Bay has a chance to exploit them a little bit.
Yeah, so Detroit has done the same thing that Baltimore has done, which is sort of try and patch up a problematic secondary in spaces by shifting a ridiculously talented playmaker in positions. The Ravens moved Kyle Hamilton, basically back to safety to try and shore that up. The Lions have been playing Brian Branch more as a true safety than when he was this sort of perfect slot weapon, which is what brings in somebody like Amik Robertson, which then gets him with a bullseye on his back, right? So it was only one half against Chicago, but I would say Green Bay has a better offense than Chicago, and that's definitely the side of the ball where you have concerns for Detroit is, are they able to keep playing at a really high level with that side against a better offense, against a good offense like Green Bay, who have a very talented quarterback, a really good running back in Josh Jacobs, receiving weaponry everywhere, even without Romeo Doubs in the lineup, a good offensive line. It's just, even from a person and a great coach in Matt LaFleur, who's done wonders, right? That's a very difficult assignment for a defense that's banged up and undermanned.
I try, Sam, to not listen to other NFL analysts for fear of, whether intentional or unintentional, stealing takes, stealing opinions. I try to come at it pure.
Okay.
So that what you get is just from me. But I accidentally overheard Mina Kimes' analysis on Jordan Love.
Yeah?
Did you hear this at all?
Don't think so.
She suggested that Jordan Love could be a Toyotathon, a quarterback.
A Toyotathon?
Toyotathon quarterback. When Toyotathon happens during the Christmas season, that's when he heats up.
Okay.
Right? So between Thanksgiving and Christmas, when it's Honda Bow season and all the stuff that you hate on the Christmas commercials, that's Jordan Love's best time. Last year, Christmas, 86th grade against the Lions on Christmas. Thanksgiving. Comes back the next week with a 92 grade against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. That stretch of play, we're right in the middle of Toyotathon. So that was Mina's, and that's why she's on the Simpsons broadcast. You see, she brings it with the Toyotathon analysis. Your thoughts here? Is this Jordan Love's time to shine, the month of December?
I mean,
Yes.
sure.
Yes, it is. That's great. You weren't ready for that.
No, I wasn't. I mean, I don't really know. I don't really know how to react to that. I don't know that he's been playing dramatically different, recently. I'm not sure we're seeing, last season, his season was characterized by this almost split, where the first half was kind of ropey and inconsistent and high variance, and then like a switch flipped, and then suddenly he was like laser accurate, amazing, the best quarterback in the NFL basically down the stretch until a weather game in the playoffs. He didn't look that great, but whatever. Like there was like a watershed moment. It's like from this point on, Jordan Love is a different quarterback. And this season, I think he's just split the difference. He isn't as volatile and inconsistent as he was right at the start, and he isn't as great as he was in the second half. And then the results have been different in game to game. Sometimes that will result in a really good-looking statistical performance. Sometimes that will result in an iffy-looking statistical performance. But I think broadly speaking, he's been playing kind of the same most weeks. You're getting, a fairly inconsistent version of Jordan Love who's more accurate than he was at the start of last year, but is not as laser-focused, big plays everywhere, like insane stuff where you're like, how do you even defend that? We're just sort of splitting the difference. So
I'm waiting. I feel like that is ready to come out at some point. That
Maybe.
was what I think marred. Like that was what highlighted his stretch run last year. His big time throws, 4, 3, 2, 4, 3, 2. Like there was a bunch of those big time throw games.
But I guess
where I was like, I cannot believe the 3rd and 10 throw that he made under pressure, fading away.
Yeah.
I can't believe some of the pinpoint throws that Jordan Love made. We haven't had that level of special nearly as often this year, and I feel like it's ready to come out maybe in a game like this.
He was good on Thanksgiving. His stats were, I think, very good. I'm just not like, if that was our moment where like, look, there's Toyotathon started, so Jordan Love's amazing. I'm not really buying that.
I think it was more of a prediction than a look back from Mina.
I haven't yet seen the indication that there is the same switch that flipped last year has flipped for him this year. Like I'm not convinced that's going to happen. I don't think it needs to. Like I don't think this is like we're waiting for Jordan Love to do what he did down the stretch last year, and only then can Green Bay be a contending team. Like I think Jordan Love just playing at the level he's played for most of this year, good, not great, is good enough for them to be dangerous and win games against pretty much anybody. So I'm kind of, I'm not really buying into that narrative, but I don't think it matters.
All right, man. I love it. This is the best Thursday night game
ever
in history
of all time.
The 9-3 Packers
since the formation of the NFL.
Since 1920.
Sure.
Since the formation of the NFL, the best Thursday night football game of all time. The 9-3 Packers, the 11-1 Lions, a division battle, the NFC Central, the North. In Detroit, we don't get night games in Detroit on Thursday nights. Now we do because the Lions are awesome. You get Dan Campbell, everything he's built. Matt LaFleur, one of the winningest coaches of all time, all coming to a head in the greatest Thursday night football game in the history of the National Football League.
There you go.
Starting to learn.
Got to say it. Got to say National Football League.
The Lions are favored in this National Football League game by 3.5. It's your turn to make a pick in the greatest TNF game in history.
I'm going to go with Green Bay.
I have talked myself into the Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
I don't love it. No, I can't. There's too many Lions fans watching. I don't want to let you down. You're right. I heard you. You're all watching. You guys are paying the bills.
You might be the most vulnerable human I've ever encountered.
It's okay. It's for Check the Mic. It's better for Check the Mic if we keep Lions fans close and engaged. They're paying the bills this year. They're flying us to the Super Bowl with their level of engagement this year. Right. They're the ones. So I'm picking the Lions.
Yeah, you're caving to the peer pressure.
Absolutely.
Detroit.
As is Harry, my son. He knows. Pick the Lions. Go where your bread's buttered. Taking the Lions here. Should be a great game. Maybe the best in NFL history.
Maybe the best.
Maybe the best actual game in NFL history is tonight.
Do we even know what that is? Like, because everyone thinks it's that Chiefs-Rams game. Where
whatever had the
like
most
points, right?
Whatever had the
just
most.
Because that was the most. That was nothing but yardage and points. Therefore, it was the best game that's ever been played in NFL history.
Yes.
Like, what?
Must have been great. All right. Is that it?
Yeah.
Great show, man. We'll be reacting instantly to the greatest Thursday Night Football game of all time tonight, of course, on YouTube. Don't forget to miss it, or never miss it, by clicking buttons. I'm done. Don't forget to miss it. Don't miss anything.
Don't forget to miss the next show.
I've said too many words today, so I'm done. Thumbs up, the bell, and we're going to do giveaways on the look at split screen here. We're going to do giveaways of the merch. So what's the best way to do giveaways? What we used to do is to try to like induce people to.
Why are you still talking? The show.
See the merch?
The show has ended.
But we were trying to get people to subscribe, and we would do giveaways. I think people should send us evidence that they have subscribed to both YouTube and audio.
Okay.
And then you might be in the running for a little merch giveaway.
Cool.
So send screenshots.
Can we?
All right, it's time to go
home?
Enjoy Week 14. We'll see you again Monday morning with our Week 14 review. Check the mic.